Chapter 4502. Moreover, the blood-bone barbarian king kept calling the emperor of god emperors, slut. In fact, he even built the Linglong Palace in an attempt to kill his way back to the god world. However, from the memories of the barbaric blood-bone king, Yiqing Luo didn't feel that the barbaric blood-bone king really hated Fengge. He was only using this method to convince himself to give up on Fengge. The reason he built the Nimble Palace was because he wanted to fight his way back to the god world, but in reality all he wanted was an explanation from the beginning. Otherwise, he wouldn't have revealed such an expression after learning that the divine emperor had passed away. In the end it even disappeared. Yiqing Luo finally understood now. Why was Dmo Xian so certain that the barbaric blood-bone king would not harm her? Because of her relationship with the divine emperor. No matter what, the barbaric blood-bone king would not do anything to her. It was no wonder, after the blood-bone barbarian king abducted her to the heaven realm, he gave her a supreme status and even handed over everything in the Gu residence to her. However, he did not meet her, because he didn't know what kind of attitude he should use to face her. She was related to the emperor of the divine emperor. From the looks of it now, she began to sympathize with the barbaric blood-bone king. The unrequited love is the most hurtful. However, he couldn't give up so easily. It was unknown whether the blood-bone barbaric king had awoken because it had subconsciously heard Fengji's words, "If you don't wake up, I'll leave," or it had already thought things through. In short, the barbaric blood-bone king sat on the spot for a while before he stood up and walked out of the cave with a gloomy expression. In a dense forest, the thick, withered leaves covered all traces of people. The barbaric blood-bone king swept his gaze around. He didn't discover anyone else. He also didn't smell the aura of the person he wanted to see in the air. He closed his eyes slightly. He was obviously disappointed. Sure enough, he was deeply in love with the divine emperor, even until now. The blood-bone barbarian king was still hoping to see Fengge. He wanted to hear her explanation. Even if it was a made-up explanation. As long as she said it, he would believe it. The barbaric blood-bone king stood in the dense forest for a long time. Standing there, Yiqing Luo felt the earth shaking and the space in front of her started to distort. It was time to switch memory spaces again. This time Yiqing Luo automatically closed her eyes. The feeling of that darkness penetrating his eyes was very uncomfortable. When the feeling of the earth shaking and mountains shaking disappeared, Yiqing Luo then slowly opened her eyes. He adjusted himself to the brightness of the light. He scanned his surroundings. She was now in a huge mansion. It was resplendent and luxurious. She looked very familiar. This was the bone residence that she lived in when she was in the heaven realm. Yiqing Luo was trying to figure out what time this memory was from. In an instant he had gone from the god realm to the heavenly realm. However, at this moment the Gu residence was extremely gloomy. It was such a huge venue. Not even a shadow of a person could be seen. It was empty, silent, and the atmosphere was a little strange. Yiqing Luo followed her memory and found the blood-bone barbaric king's courtyard. He had yet to get close. Her hand was suddenly grabbed by a force. His entire person was suddenly pulled into the darkness. Yiqing Luo was on high alert as she turned her hand to attack the person behind her. However, when he caught a glimpse of a black figure out of the corner of his eye, he stopped. She frowned and looked behind her. What came into view was the palace lord of the secluded palace who was shrouded in a black robe. In the darkness he looked even more sinister. Chapter 4503. Yiqing Luo's eyes sunk. "It's you." The palace lord's hand was still clasping her arm. His eyes under the black robe were slightly dark. "Didn't I say not to follow?" Yiqing Luo raised her brows. "You say no and I won't follow? The current owner of the bone residence seems to be me. You barged into my territory." The palace lord's emotions fluctuated, as though there were some ups and downs. After some time he sighed helplessly. "You shouldn't have come in." "Blood-bone barbaric king's memory is your motive?" Yiqing Luo flung his hand away as her lips curled into a cold arc. "How is it, have you seen what you wanted to see?" The palace lord wanted to say something, but when the words reached the tip of his tongue, he swallowed it back. In the end he only spat out 3 words, "Not yet." Yiqing Luo scoffed lightly as her long and narrow eyes didn't conceal her ridicule. Her gaze swept past the blood-bone barbaric king's courtyard. The ridicule in her eyes deepened. "If I ask you, what is the palace lord of darkness trying to get from the blood-bone barbaric king, will you answer?" The palace lord of darkness raised his head slightly. The black robe covered his face and his current emotions couldn't be seen. His voice was slightly hoarse. "What did you see?" He didn't answer but asked back. Yiqing Luo didn't hide as she was very straightforward, blood-bone barbaric king's memory. She paused as her long and narrow eyes curved. Don't tell me. You didn't see it? If he had seen earlier, those memories between the blood-bone barbaric king and the sovereign of gods. At this moment he definitely wouldn't ask like this. For a long time, there was no response from the other party. This was also indirectly confirmed. The other party was indeed. She didn't see anything. Yiqing Luo suddenly laughed. Looks like Palace Lord's luck isn't too good. You finally got Bai Mei as a sacrifice, to open the blood-bone barbaric king's sealed memory entrance. But in the end you didn't get anything. What did you see? He asked again as his voice became much heavier. Yiqing Luo shrugged. I naturally saw something that you didn't, of course. I can't tell you. Yiqing Luo. He suddenly spoke in a serious tone. Tell me now, what exactly did you see? You tell me now, perhaps. I can still guarantee your safety for the time being. But, after this, I can't predict how Master will treat you. Yiqing Luo's eyes curved into a smile. You want to know? Why don't you tell me what Yu Palace's goal is? What does Yu Palace want? He fell silent once more. Yiqing Luo's brows curved slightly as her lips curled up, revealing a hint of slyness and ridicule. Since you're not willing to answer, then let's forget about this deal. After Yiqing Luo finished her words, she didn't look at the Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace. The man behind him had no intention of asking any further questions. The atmosphere turned silent once again. There was an awkward atmosphere in the air. After a while, the Palace Lord of Ethereal Palace then retracted his thoughts as he frowned slightly and opened his mouth. Yiqing Luo, even if you don't say it now, when Master makes a move on you, should be careful. Suddenly, a cautious voice was heard from not too far away. She saw a 30 to 40-year-old middle-aged man, leading 2 male servants, carefully walking towards blood-bone barbaric king's courtyard. Chapter 4504. The Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace immediately kept quiet. Both of them quietened down as they looked at the person in front of them vigilantly. The middle-aged man and the manservant didn't notice the 2 people in the dark as they whispered to each other as they walked. Your daily task is to clean up Bone Lord's courtyard and send the 3 meals to his door, do you understand? The 2 servants nodded obediently, but there was still a look of fear on their faces. Don't be afraid. The middle-aged man comforted them. As long as you don't make any noise when you work and disturb Bone Lord, you will be safe and sound. Although they said that, their faces were still very pale. You should feel lucky to work in Bone Lord's courtyard. As long as you pay attention and don't disturb Bone Lord. Your monthly allowance is higher than others and your life will be much easier. The middle-aged man continued, you 2 are smart kids, just pay attention. As he said that, the middle-aged man sent the manservant to Bone Lord's courtyard and left. After the middle-aged man left, the 2 manservants looked at each other in dismay. Then they looked at Bone Lord's direction. The 2 of them walked into the courtyard silently. Yiqing Luo, who was in the dark, raised her brows when she saw this scene. Those 2 manservants didn't look as innocent and harmless as they looked on the surface. They acted so afraid in front of the middle-aged man. But when the middle-aged man left, the 2 of them walked into the courtyard without any hesitation. Interesting. This was a sign that something was going to happen. The Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace glanced at Yiqing Luo's honeyed smile and frowned slightly. What are you smiling at? Yiqing Luo didn't turn back to look at him as her gaze was fixed on the 2 manservants. There's a good show to watch, I'm happy. Good show? The Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace frowned in puzzlement. Just as he finished his words. Soon after, the 2 servants quickly approached the blood-bone barbarian king's room. Their speed was so fast that it wasn't something an ordinary manservant could possess. The Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace was stunned for a moment as his gaze stopped on Yiqing Luo for a moment, as though he was puzzled why Yiqing Luo knew that there was something wrong with those 2 manservants. After looking for a long time, he didn't see anything strange. Yiqing Luo didn't bother about him. Only then did he turn his eyes back to the servant. The 2 servants were clearly well trained. One on the left and the other on the right, they leaped to the door of the barbaric blood-bone king's room. One of them took out a bamboo tube and inserted it into the window. The servant placed his mouth on the bamboo tube and was about to put the medicine in. Suddenly his expression changed. He abruptly left the bamboo tube and leaped backwards. The servant's body fell heavily to the ground. Black blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. When the other servant saw this, he looked at the bamboo pipe that was stuck in the window but did not move at all. Realizing something, he quickly turned around and wanted to escape. But just as he made his move, the tightly shut door suddenly opened. A terrifying profound light shot out from the door. In an instant, the servant who had escaped was brought back. A tall and straight figure walked out of the room. The blood-bone barbarian king looked dejected. His brocade robe was covered with wine stains and his long black hair was messy like a chicken's nest. He didn't know what else was stuck on it. How could he still have the elegance he once had? But, no matter how disheveled and dejected he looked, the moment he walked out, the frightening aura emanating from his body was enough to intimidate people's hearts. When they saw him, the two servants who had fallen on the ground immediately climbed up and looked at the blood-bone barbaric king vigilantly. End of this chapter. Chapter 4505. Who are you? What's your purpose in approaching me? The barbaric blood king's voice was cold. The servants looked at each other. One of them wiped the blood off his lips, got up and slapped the direction of the barbaric blood king. The other quickly surrounded the barbaric blood king from behind. The two servants showed their killing moves when they attacked. The barbaric blood king sneered, his eyes full of contempt. In the face of the servants' attack, he did not even budge an inch. Standing on the spot, he casually waved his sleeves. The powerful dark wave was like a surging wave. With a bang, he stood in front of the two servants, blocking their way. The two servants were thrown to the ground by the powerful force, spitting out mouthfuls of blood. We were just ordered to test Bone Lord's identity. The servants knew that they were no match for the barbaric blood king, so they immediately lowered their stance. The first servant explained, because the name of Bone Lord is the same as the sinner from the divine realm, so someone offered a high price to let us test the relationship between you and the sinner from the divine realm. Sinner? The barbaric blood king's eyes darkened and a sharp glint flashed across his eyes. We know that you are definitely not that sinner, but the other party offered a high price, so we just came to test. The second servant hurriedly said. The barbaric blood king frowned slightly and did not speak for a long time. The expression on his face was very indifferent. The silent look on his face. This caused the two servants to tremble in fear. Their eyes were filled with unconcealable fear and dread. They did not expect. The strength of this person called Bone Monarch was actually so high. Trembling with fear, they waited for the barbaric blood king's verdict. However, the barbaric blood bone king's expression did not change as he turned around and returned to his room. With a bang, he closed the door once again. The two servants outside the door were dumbfounded. What did this mean? Bone Lord did not kill them? And did not intend to punish them? Could it be that he let them go? The two servants stared at each other blankly for a long time. Finally, they carefully walked out of the courtyard. With a limp and a tentative step, he turned his head back with every step. He walked out of the courtyard. No one stopped him. The two servants shuddered in fear and eagerly wanted to escape. Just as they supported each other and were about to leave, a hand suddenly appeared in front of them. Then a black shadow flashed past his eyes. They only had time to see a black robe. Then his feet left the ground. He could hear the sound of the wind whistling in his ears. By the time their feet touched the ground again, they saw a figure shrouded in a black robe and emitting an austere aura standing before them. The two servants were so scared that their legs went soft. They knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. Bone Lord, spare us. Bone Lord, spare us. We won't dare to do it again. We won't dare to. If you listen obediently, no one will kill you. Suddenly, a clear and melodious voice of a woman entered their ears. The two of them were stunned, and their begging and wailing stopped abruptly. He looked in the direction of the voice. Behind the black-robed man, a fairy-like woman in fiery red clothes walked out and looked at them with a smile. That smile was bright and dazzling. But the two only felt an inexplicable chill on their backs. Who are you? The servant asked in horror. Chapter 4506. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a smile. You don't need to bother about who we are. As long as you answer my questions obediently, you will be safe and sound. The two attendants exchanged glances, weighing the strength of both sides. Although he really couldn't tell how strong the black-robed man and the young and beautiful woman were, he still couldn't tell. But in terms of their temperament, the two of them decisively chose to be obedient. Ask away. From the mouths of the two servants. Yiqing Luo roughly understood the current situation. It was probably, from the memories before that, Fenggu heavily injured the blood-bone barbarian king and announced to the public. The divine emperor had personally suppressed the blood-bone barbarian king and annihilated it. From now on, there will no longer be a barbaric blood-bone king. As for the matter of Fenggu saving the blood-bone barbarian king, no one mentioned it at all. Other than Feng Gu himself, no one knew that the barbaric Blood-Bone King was still alive. This explanation matched up with the version which Yi Qing Luo had heard from Dmo Xian previously. However, Yi Qing Luo expressed that there must be something that she didn't know. After all, it was the barbaric Blood-Bone King's memory. There were some things that the barbaric Blood-Bone King didn't know, she couldn't see it either. He could only imagine and guess. Yi Qing Luo looked at the two footboys for some time and asked again, "Since Bone Lord has already died in God Realm, why do you still want to probe that Bone Lord's identity?" The two servants hugged each other and explained while trembling. This bone mansion had suddenly appeared in the heaven realm. No one knew the identity of the master of the bone mansion. However, looking at the luxurious decorations of the Gu residence, it was clear that he was not an ordinary person. There were also profound practitioners who wanted to occupy the Gu residence's territory. They were heading to the Gu residence to stir up trouble. There was only entry and no exit. At first there were people who didn't believe it. However, as more and more profound practitioners disappeared from the world after entering the bone mansion, as time passed, no one dared to take half a step into the Gu residence. As a result, the bone mansion became a strange and mysterious existence. Everyone in the Heaven Domain's ancient city was very curious about the bone residence. But no one dared to test him. There was once when someone outside the bone residence shouted the words Bone Lord. Everyone knew. The master of this bone mansion was called Bone Monarch. However, no one had ever seen this person called Bone Lord. Bone Lord. This name was exactly the same as the name of the sinner who had been suppressed by the divine emperor and reduced to ashes. However, no one would lump the two Bone Lords together. After all, the emperor of the God Emperor had personally said that the sinner of the God world had already been reduced to ashes. However, the two servants expressed that they also did not know the appearance of the person who made the bid. They also did not know why that person would be so interested in Bone Lord. They took the money and entered the Gu residence to do their work. That person, when did he look for you? Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes as she asked. The servant replied, 3 days ago. 3 days? Yi Qing Luo's eyes flashed past a meaningful smile as she asked again, then have you all heard of the matter regarding the Bone Lord being annihilated by the Sovereign of God? The manservant was stunned. He shook his head and said, that's a matter of the immortal realm. How can we, the people of the heaven realm, get any information? Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she seemed to be thinking about something. Manservant B suddenly thought of something as he patted his head. Speaking of this, I did hear a few seniors mentioning about the gossip in the immortal realm. But whether it's true or false, I dare not guarantee. Please remember this book's domain name. Com. Wonderful Bookhouse mobile version website. Com. Chapter 4507. Tell me about it. Yi Qing Luo wasn't sure which period of time she had entered into this memory. But based on her current speculation, it should be at least half a year or more since that memory. Half a year. Bloodbone Barbaric King had yet to recover from Feng Ji's serious injury. Look at his dispirited look. Apparently he didn't know that he was saved by Feng Gu. Yi Qing Luo really wanted to rush out and tell Bloodbone Barbaric King the truth. Unfortunately, this was only a memory that had been born. It wasn't the real world. Even if it changed the story in the memory, it couldn't change the fact that it had been born. Servant B recalled his senior's words and said, I heard that the Emperor of God fell in love with someone and gave birth to a child. Yi Qing Luo nodded. This piece of news was indeed true. Feng Gu was indeed pregnant, and gave birth to a child for that person called A Huang. It seemed that this servant B's news was not fake. I heard that everyone in the God realm was trying to find out the identity of the person who fell in love with the Emperor of God. But it seemed that no one knew who that person was. But later on, it was said that the Emperor of God's child had disappeared and the child's father had also disappeared. Now the God realm is in a mess and the Emperor of God is looking for his child everywhere. Servant B's words made Yi Qing Luo's eyes move slightly. The child was missing? And that person called Ah Huang was also missing? The child's father had run away with the child? After Servant B finished, he looked at Yi Qing Luo carefully. I have said what I should say now. Now can we? Yi Qing Luo waved her hand. The two of them were in a hurry to escape. The palace lord of secluded darkness palace looked coldly at the two figures who were leaving and turned to Yi Qing Luo. You believe what he said? Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. Why not? There was no need for the servant to lie. What's more, the God realm and heaven realm were separated by thousands of miles. They were two different worlds. For the heaven realm to know of any news in the god realm, it would at most be an extremely explosive event. It was true that the divine emperor was pregnant and had a child. The disappearance of this child and the child's father in the god realm might not be fake. However, why would this memory appear in the barbaric blood-bone king's memory? Could it be the disappearance of Feng Ji's child had something to do with the barbaric blood-bone king? The person who probed if the blood-bone barbarian king was the bone lord of the divine world was also someone from the divine world? Or perhaps, Feng Ji's men? No, it shouldn't be. At that time, when the two servants approached the blood-bone barbarian king's room, their bodies carried a murderous aura. Then he attacked the barbaric blood-bone king. It was also merciless. If it was Feng Ji's people, it was absolutely impossible to kill the blood-bone barbarian king. She had a nagging feeling that there was something in all of this that she had overlooked, or perhaps she had yet to understand. Did you think of something? The palace master of the Netherworld Palace noticed the change in the girl's expression. Yiqing Luo kept her thoughts as she raised her eyes to look at him. Meeting with that pair of deep black eyes, she couldn't see through his emotions. Her lips curled slightly, revealing an arc that didn't look like a smile. Whatever I thought of has nothing to do with you. / Sogo. Chapter 4508. Yiqing Luo. Now that we're in the same place, we're on the same boat. The palace lord of the Netherworld Palace didn't like this feeling of being isolated by Yiqing Luo. When Yiqing Luo heard that, she couldn't help but laughed out. Don't? You and I are not the same kind of people and our motives are different. She laughed and took 2 steps back. He widened the distance between him and the palace master of the Netherworld Palace. Then she looked at him with a smile. You want to find the secrets in the blood-bone barbaric king's memories for the palace of gloomy darkness. As for me, I'm just here to take a look and see if I can give you some trouble. She paused and spread her hands. So, we're actually standing on opposite sides. The palace master of the secluded palace stared at her with a hurricane in his eyes. Yiqing Luo tilted her head as the corners of her lips curled upwards, as she continued with a beaming smile. So, what do I know? How could I possibly tell you? Yiqing Luo. The palace lord's voice had sunk a lot. His hands under the black robe clenched into fists. He seemed to be suppressing some sort of emotion. His gaze towards Yiqing Luo grew deeper and deeper. Don't shout at me. It's useless. Yiqing Luo dug her ears. Why don't we have a fight? If you win me, I might tell you what I know. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace was obviously depressed. You know that I won't do anything to you. No, I don't know. Yiqing Luo hurriedly waved her hands, putting on an expression as though she wanted to cut off all relations with him. Don't portray yourself to be so affectionate in front of me. Yiqing Luo. The palace lord's tone became heavier, unable to accept Yiqing Luo's increasingly incisive words. Facing his anger, Yiqing Luo didn't have much of an emotion. She indifferently curled her lips and waved her hand at him. All right, let's disperse here. Go and complete your mission. You're not coming with me? The palace master of secluded darkness palace pursed her lips. Do you think that by following me you will be able to learn things that you can't? Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes at him. If I don't want you to know and don't want secluded palace to succeed, do you think there's any use for you to follow me? The palace master of the Netherworld Palace's mouth moved. He did not want to be separated from Yiqing Luo. But what Yiqing Luo said was right. Between him and Yiqing Luo, it was an opposing situation. He came here. It was an order from his master. This was his mission. As for Yiqing Luo, she naturally wouldn't allow him to complete the mission so easily. In the end, he didn't say anything. Yiqing Luo only gave a sarcastic smile. Then he turned around and disappeared in front of the palace master of Gloomy Palace. Far away from the palace master of Gloomy Palace, Yiqing Luo felt that the air was much fresher. There was a person who was watching her, and there was a high possibility that he was behind her. No matter how he thought about it, he felt goosebumps and uneasy, although he wouldn't really hurt her. But this kind of injury was not a threat to her life. As for the rest, it was hard to say. Yiqing Luo returned to the Gu residence. He found the courtyard of the blood-bone barbarian king with ease. At this moment, the courtyard was quiet. It was no different from when Yiqing Luo left earlier. The footboy's blood was still on the ground. It could be seen that the blood-bone barbarian king did not open the door after the servant left. Yiqing Luo concealed her presence. She quietly got closer to the blood-bone barbarian king's room. She wasn't sure if the blood-bone barbarian king would discover her approaching. Chapter 4509. After all, the strength of the two servants just now was not weak. He hadn't even gotten close. He was discovered by the blood-bone barbarian king. She did not think that her strength was above that of the blood-bone barbarian king. However, even if they were discovered by the barbaric blood-bone king, she wasn't too worried. After all, she still had the teleportation secret technique to save her life. But when Yi Qing Luo tried to get closer, there was no movement in the room. Yi Qing Luo walked as she tried to go around to the back of the room. Then he tried to open the window at the back. As soon as he opened the window, the smell of alcohol assailed his nostrils. The interior of the house was dark, and it was impossible to see the surroundings clearly. There was a moment of silence. The people in the room didn't seem to notice the commotion outside. Yi Qing Luo lifted up her skirt and squeezed into the window. The stench of blood and alcohol in the room was unbearable. Yi Qing Luo covered her mouth and nose as she frowned as she walked in. She had entered the blood-bone barbarian king's room no less than 100 times in the Gu residence. As for the furnishings inside, he could practically come and go with his eyes closed. The room in her memory was exactly the same as the one she had seen before. Bang! There was the sound of something falling to the ground. Yi Qing Luo was shocked. Soon the room became quiet again. She remained silent for a long time before approaching the direction of the sound. He bypassed the bedroom. Yi Qing Luo walked to the front of the main hall. In the darkness, he could vaguely see a human silhouette lying on the ground, motionless. It was the barbaric blood-bone king. Was he drunk? Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as she hid herself behind the pillar. After an unknown amount of time, the barbaric blood-bone king finally moved. He moved. There was the sound of bottles clinking. It could be seen that there were a lot of wine bottles and wine glasses beside him. He struggled to get up from the ground. The sound of bottles crashing into each other could be heard as they fell to the ground. In the quiet and dark room, it was extremely ear-piercing. He staggered to his feet and groped for a moment on the table. Finally he found a bottle of wine. He began to gulp down the wine again. Before the pot of wine was finished, Yi Zichen's eyes lit up. He suddenly fell limp to the ground again. The wine pot fell to the ground, filling the room with the fragrance of wine. The broken pieces of the wine flask splashed towards Yi Qing Luo's feet. This was simply the rhythm of leading a befuddled life. He drank when he woke up, slept when he was drunk, and continued drinking when he woke up, no matter how good one's physique was. If this went on, that's still alcohol poisoning, right? It was estimated that ever since the barbaric blood-bone king came to the heaven realm, it had maintained this state. Looking at the blood-bone barbaric king's current state, he really did look like he had fallen out of love. Yi Qing Luo squatted behind the pillar for quite some time. The blood-bone barbaric king was indeed drunk and unconscious. She simply walked out from the darkness. However, the moment she moved, there was no reaction yet. The sound of wine pots clinking against each other could be heard. In the next instant, a black shadow attacked him. The strong smell of alcohol filled his nose. Her wrist was tightly clasped by a cold hand. F***ck. Yi Qing Luo let out a curse as she abruptly clasped that icy cold hand, trying to avoid it. But that strength was extremely strong. It was as if he was grabbing her hand and pulling her whole body into his arms. The smell of alcohol almost made Yi Qing Luo faint. Was this barbaric blood-bone king pretending to be drunk? Deliberately luring her out? Yi Qing Luo cursed in her heart and was about to teleport away. Suddenly she heard a choked voice transmitted into her ears. Phone go. Phone go. Hurry up and read the latest update. Download address. Phone reading. Chapter 4510. Phone go? He was calling. Phone go? Yi Qing Luo's movements paused slightly. This pause made blood-bone barbaric king's arms hug her tightly. That strength almost kneaded Yi Qing Luo into two halves. Yi Qing Luo wanted to struggle. But just as she moved, blood-bone barbaric king panicked and increased his strength. He hugged her even tighter. As he hugged her, he spoke in a choked voice. Fenggu, don't be angry with me. Fenggu, I know I'm wrong, don't leave me. Don't. Yi Qing Luo. Bloodbone barbaric king had treated her as Fenggu? She stopped struggling. Bloodbone barbaric king then calmed down a little. Fenggu, you came to look for me, you still came to look for me? You can't let go of me, right? Yi Qing Luo felt uncomfortable being hugged, but she didn't dare to struggle too much. She could only purse her lips and said word by word, let go of me first, you're using too much strength and it stinks. Her words made bloodbone barbaric king stiffen. Yi Qing Luo's heart also jumped. Could it be that her voice was different from Feng Ji's and Bloodbone Barbaric King could tell? She immediately became vigilant. But unexpectedly, Bloodbone Barbaric King quickly let go of her and took a step back. Like a child who had done something wrong, he lowered his head. Feng Gu, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Don't be angry with me, I won't touch you, I won't touch you. As he said that, he lowered his eyes to look at his messy body. He hurriedly tugged at his clothes as though he wanted to take it off, but Yiqing Luo was around. I'm going to change now. He had just taken 2 steps when he hurriedly swayed his body back. No. If I leave, what if you leave too? That careful look made Yiqing Luo inexplicably uncomfortable. Bloodbone Barbaric King, he really loved Feng Gu. This was the first time she saw Bloodbone Barbaric King put himself in such a lowly position. Even when he was facing Feng Gu, he didn't care. She had never been in this way. Yiqing Luo sighed. Don't go change, go rest. No. I don't need to rest. Bloodbone Barbaric King's emotions tensed up. Are you leaving? You still don't intend to forgive me. You still don't intend to take me back with you, right? Yiqing Luo frowned. What kind of plot development was this? According to the previous memories. No. The Bloodbone Barbarian King had misunderstood that Feng Gu wanted to kill him. After that, he should be filled with resentment. Why was he the one apologizing now? Yiqing Luo really couldn't understand it. She looked at the clearly unconscious barbaric Bloodbone King. It just so happened that he could take this opportunity to sound him out. Yiqing Luo coughed lightly as she recalled Feng Ji's tone and asked, Don't tell me? You don't hate me? The barbaric Bloodbone King was silent. His head was lowered, and it was hard to see his expression in the darkness. After a long while he slowly said, I don't hate you. I know that you blame me for doing such a heaven-defying thing. The words you said to me that day were all fake. It was all because you were angry at me, Yiqing Luo. This was just an excuse he came up with to make himself feel better, wasn't it? In that memory, Yiqing Luo couldn't tell that Feng Gu intentionally said those angry words because he was angry at him. I won't do it again. Things that you don't like, I won't do it again. Bloodbone Barbaric King hurriedly raised his head as he swore seriously. Chapter 45:11. The next moment, his entire aura was as gentle as a pet. Feng Gu, don't leave me alone in the heaven realm. Don't leave me so far away from you. Yiqing Luo didn't know how to answer. After all, she wasn't the real Feng Gu. He also did not know what kind of mentality and thoughts Feng Gu, who had wanted to seriously injure and kill him, had when he attacked the Bloodbone Barbarian King. He also didn't understand why Feng Gu would exhaust his own strength to save the barbaric Bloodbone King from the gates of hell. The story of these two was too complicated and melodramatic. Yiqing Luo didn't answer. The Bloodbone Barbaric King muttered to himself. His tone was filled with fear and uneasiness. It's fine if you don't want me to return to the God realm. Then you can also find time to visit me. Yiqing Luo. Was he willing to be a kept man outside? Repeat 500 words, refresh in 20 minutes. The Yuan IP grand ceremony is too tempting, sob, I was wrong. The next moment, his entire aura was as gentle as a pet. Feng Gu, don't leave me alone in the heaven realm. Don't leave me so far away from you. Yiqing Luo didn't know how to answer. After all, she wasn't the real Feng Gu. She wasn't sure what kind of mentality and thoughts Feng Gu had when he tried to injure and kill her, to take action against the Bloodbone Barbaric King. He also didn't understand why Feng Gu would exhaust his own strength to save the barbaric Bloodbone King from the gates of hell. The story of these two was too complicated and melodramatic. Yiqing Luo didn't answer. The Bloodbone Barbaric King muttered to himself. His tone was filled with fear and uneasiness. It's fine if you don't want me to return to the God realm. Then it's fine if you can find time to visit me. Yiqing Luo. Was he willing to be a kept man outside? The next moment, his entire aura was as gentle as a pet. Feng Gu, don't leave me alone in the heaven realm. Don't leave me so far away from you. Yiqing Luo didn't know how to answer. After all, she was not the real Feng Gu. He also did not know what kind of mentality and thoughts Feng Gu, who had wanted to seriously injure and kill him, had when he attacked the Bloodbone Barbarian King. He also did not understand why Feng Gu had exhausted all his strength to save the Bloodbone Barbaric King from the gates of hell. The story of these two people was too complicated, too melodramatic. Yiqing Luo didn't reply. The Bloodbone Barbaric King muttered to himself. His tone was filled with fear and uneasiness. It's fine if you don't want me to return to the God world. Then it's fine if you can find time to visit me. Yiqing Luo. Was he willing to be a kept man outside? The next moment, his entire aura was as gentle as a pet. Her voice was also very soft and slow. Fenggu, don't leave me alone in the heaven realm. Don't leave me so far away from you. Yiqing Luo didn't know how to answer. After all, she was not the real Fenggu. She also did not know what kind of mentality and thoughts Fenggu, who had wanted to seriously injure and kill him, had when he attacked the blood-bone barbaric king. She also did not understand why Fenggu had exhausted all his energy to save the blood-bone barbaric king from the gates of hell. The story of these two people was too complicated, too melodramatic. Yiqing Luo did not answer. Chapter 45:12. Fenggu held his arm tightly with both hands and looked solemnly at the blood-bone barbaric king. Her voice was hoarse and choked with sobs. I know, if it's Agu, he won't refuse any of my requests. Let me be selfish for the last time. You must take good care of my child. I only trust you, only you can trust me. When she said this, her tone was filled with endless sorrow. What on earth happened? The blood-bone barbaric king sobered up a lot after hearing Fengji's solemn request. He shook his muddled head hard. Fenggu, did something happen in the divine realm? This child what? I don't have time to explain to you. Fenggu hurriedly interrupted him, her face full of pleading and expectation. The only person I can trust now is you. I'll give the child to you. No matter who asks you for the child, you can't give it to him. Her eyes fell deeply on the child. It was as if she wanted to engrave the child's appearance in her heart. It was so painful and sorrowful. Agu, please, you must take good care of the child. After saying this, Fenggu forcefully closed her eyes and withdrew her gaze from the child. Without waiting for the blood-bone barbaric king to speak, Fenggu had already rushed out of the courtyard and disappeared. The blood-bone barbaric king held the child in his arms and quickly chased after her. However, Fengji's figure, along with his aura, had completely disappeared. If it wasn't for the fact that the child in his arms had confirmed Fengji's appearance, the blood-bone barbaric king would have thought all of this was just a hallucination. The blood-bone barbaric king stood in the middle of the courtyard for a long time with the child in his arms. He couldn't come back to his senses. It wasn't until the child grabbed his hand and bit it in his mouth that the blood-bone barbaric king's consciousness came back. He stiffened his head and looked down blankly at the child in his arms. Wrapped in soft and warm satin, the little guy was really small. He was wrinkled and not very good-looking. The little chubby hand grabbed one of his hands and stuffed it into its mouth. Saliva stuck to his fingers. He couldn't feel the slightest bit of annoyance or impatience. Maybe it was because the little one had a pair of round, distinct black and white eyes. Because he was extremely similar to Fenggu. The barbaric blood-bone king stiffened. He turned around and returned to his room with the baby in his arms. As soon as he stepped into the room, the baby squeaked and waved his little hands. He even wrinkled his little face. The barbaric blood-bone king realized that the house was in a mess. Perhaps even the smell of the mass grave was not as bad as this house. He left the room and closed the door. Very quickly, the middle-aged man who Yiqing Luo saw earlier, who brought along a manservant to the courtyard, who was also the butler of the Gu residence, brought along the cleaning staff. Then he asked the barbaric blood-bone king to bring the child to another clean house. As for the reason why the blood-bone barbarian king suddenly had another child, the butler was very tactful and did not ask any questions. The blood-bone barbarian king asked Gu-san to look after the child, while he quickly went to wash himself, getting rid of the smell on his body. The group of people was extremely busy. Although she was a little flustered, she wasn't very good with children. But in the end it was not a big mistake. However, that child loved to nestle in the arms of the barbaric blood-bone king. Giving Gu-san a hug for a while, Gu-san's face was grabbed a few times by the child. If it wasn't for the fact that the barbaric blood-bone king valued the child so much, Gu-san would probably fly into a rage. Chapter 45:13. Yiqing Luo was in the dark, silently watching everything that was happening in front of her. The Gu residence's secret guards were walking back and forth. Blood-bone barbaric king was walking back and forth. But no one had discovered her existence at all. If it wasn't for the fact that she was able to converse with the others in her memory. If it wasn't for the fact that blood-bone barbaric king would have mistaken her for Fenggu when he was drunk, she would have suspected it. Blood-bone barbaric king and the others actually couldn't see her. Otherwise, based on blood-bone barbaric king's ability and the Gu residence's secret guard's ability, how was it possible that they hadn't detected her existence for such a long time? Yiqing Luo expressed a dazed look. After a day's worth of torment, blood-bone barbaric king fed and coaxed the child. He who had just become a father for the first time was already mentally exhausted. He placed the child by the side as he leaned against the head, gently caressing the little baby's head as he panted heavily. Until now he still felt that all these were not real. All of a sudden he had a child. Blood-bone barbaric king lowered his eyelids as he gazed deeply at the little baby's sleeping face. His brows seemed to be tainted with a sliver of memories of the past. Your mother is really magnanimous to hand you over to me just like that. He burst out laughing. Wasn't she worried that I would take revenge on her child because of what she had done to me? This sentence ended. He chuckled in a low voice. But this laugh was filled with obvious pain. Of course she wasn't worried. From the start till the end, she knew how much I loved her, so she dared to hand you over to me without any worries. His hand gently caressed the baby's smooth and tender skin. The minute he touched that piece of softness, the strength of his fingers subconsciously lightened. He was afraid that if he wasn't careful, he would cut the little baby's tender skin. You are the same as your mother, heartless. Even in a stranger's house, you can still sleep so soundly. Blood-bone barbaric king's tone had an obvious change. She knew that I had no way to force myself and hurt her heart, right? His gaze towards the little baby became gentler and gentler. Her low murmur was also very soft. He slowly closed his eyes. His hand was still on the baby's shoulder, and his strength was very gentle. Although I don't know what exactly happened in the divine realm, and I don't know what happened to your mother, but since your mother handed you over to me, I will take good care of you. In his mind, the woman said it over and over again. I only trust you and only you can trust me. The only person I can trust now is you. Believe she really did know about his feelings for her. After an unknown period of time, the barbaric blood-bone king's breathing slowly calmed down. Inside the house, the two of them were sleeping soundly. Yiqing Luo stayed for a long time. Only then did he slowly walk out from the darkness. As she quietly approached, her eyes were fixed on the barbaric blood-bone king. He did not disturb the blood-bone barbarian king even when he reached the edge. She held her breath and looked past the blood-bone barbarian king to the little baby. It was a small ball. It was wrapped in a soft silk cloth. Little Zhao's chubby fingers had unknowingly grabbed one of the blood-bone barbarian king's fingers. Not knowing why, when her gaze fell onto the little baby's upper body, Yiqing Luo's mouth was filled with an indescribable emotion. Like, something seemed to be burning in her chest. It wasn't that kind of scorching feeling. Just, some kind of flame was fluctuating, surging bit by bit. Chapter 45:14. This feeling drove her bit by bit towards the bed. She wanted to see what this baby looked like. But, just as her gaze was about to land on the baby's face, her eyes suddenly turned black. The ground beneath her feet shook violently. The earth shook and the surrounding space started to distort. Yiqing Luo? Mother ***, was this intentional? At such a crucial moment she changed the spatial memory. She purposely didn't want her to see what the baby looked like. Yiqing Luo ridiculed endlessly in her heart. After the earth-shaking feeling, she opened her eyes again. She was no longer in the bone residence. What entered her eyes was a desolate mountain range. The surroundings were so desolate that there wasn't even a single tree. The sky was strangely oppressive and gloomy. Yiqing Luo frowned as she surveyed the surroundings. Based on her previous experience, usually when she reached this place, coupled with the surrounding environment, Yiqing Luo was certain this memory was going to stir up trouble again. The previous part was still half cruel and half sweet. Now it was going to start the sadomasochistic mode. Yiqing Luo, who had experience, indicated she didn't need to specially look for the brute blood-bone king. Anyway, as an outsider who entered the brute blood-bone king's memory, this memory would appear in front of her sooner or later. But there was a little doubt. Previously, when she met the Lord of Secluded Palace, he obviously wasn't clear about what she was talking about. Brute blood-bone king's memory. Which meant, until now, the Lord of Secluded Palace hadn't seen brute blood-bone king's memory. What she and the Lord of Secluded Palace had experienced was different. What was going on? Was it because the brute blood-bone king's subconscious didn't want this memory to be known by the Secluded Palace? Then why? But she could clearly see every piece of memory, just as she was thinking. Suddenly she heard a sound beside her ear. Yiqing Luo's brows twitched slightly. The sadomasochistic love was about to begin. She surveyed the surroundings. In such a desolate place she really couldn't find any place to hide. In the end she could only climb to a higher mountain. From this angle, she could only lie on the ground to carefully look at what was happening below. The dense black aura gave off a cold, suffocating feeling. Below, a figure ran up first. That person was dressed in a black robe, and he was holding a baby in his arms. The strong winds blew against his sleeves. Profound waves rippled in the air. Monstrous waves surged. This terrifying, imposing manner made Yiqing Luo couldn't help but hold her breath, as she retracted her own presence even more. He lay on the huge rock, not daring to move. This scene was inexplicably familiar. Not waiting for Yiqing Luo's mind to recall this familiar scene, a woman in a fiery red dress came quickly. Yiqing Luo, there was no need to reminisce. This scene was exactly the same as when Feng Gu had heavily injured the barbaric Bloodbone King. Except for the venue. Apart from the Bloodbone Barbarian King, there was a baby in his arms. Feng Gu held his long sword, his eyes cold as he stared at the barbaric Bloodbone King. No, more accurately speaking, she was staring at the baby in his arms. Yiqing Luo gauged with her eyes from this distance. The baby was much bigger than when Feng Gu had carried him in her previous memory. Based on the time, it should have been more than 3 months. Give me the baby. Chapter 45:15. Bloodbone Barbaric King hugged the child in his arms tightly as a chilly intent flashed past his eyes. He carried the baby and had no intention to let go. What do you treat this place of mine as? His tone was extremely cold. Even his expression was so sunken that it wasn't the same as when he was facing Feng Gu. The atmosphere between the two of them was extremely strange. Both of them were entangled with each other as though they wanted to suppress the other party. Yiqing Luo's heart was filled with apprehension. She didn't know what had happened to Bloodbone Barbaric King to actually use such an attitude when facing Feng Gu. Even earlier when he displayed his forbidden skill and pretended to be evil to deceive Feng Gu. She had never seen such a chilly attitude. Between the two of them. Was there any conflict? And why did Feng Gu use such an attitude to ask for the child from Bloodbone Barbaric King? And even using her long sword to point at Bloodbone Barbaric King? At that time she was the one who sent the baby to Bloodbone Barbaric King, wasn't it? Below, the two of them were still confronting each other. Feng Ji's veiled face was filled with anger. Bloodbone Barbaric King, return the child to me. This is my child. Don't force me to make a move on you. Bloodbone Barbaric King's pupils contracted slightly. His ears were filled with Feng Ji's voice. Bloodbone Barbaric King. She called him Bloodbone Barbaric King. She didn't call him Agu, it was an exclusive title that belonged to her alone. Was she trying to break off relations with him? Bloodbone Barbaric King's heart was in turmoil. He clenched his fists tightly as his eyes were burning with anger. He lowered his head and looked at the baby who was giggling at him and waving his hands at him. The surging emotions in his eyes were even more intense. As though he was in an intense struggle. He had entered into a frenzied state. Return the child to me. Feng Gu saw that he didn't respond for a long time. The chilly intent in her eyes was filled with a thick murderous intent. Her long sword moved and struck towards Bloodbone Barbaric King. Her action was clean and crisp without any hesitation. A dangerous aura shrouded Bloodbone Barbaric King. Bloodbone Barbaric King suddenly regained his senses as he raised his hand and waved out a burst of profound wave, blocking Feng Ji's attack. He held the baby tightly and leaped to the other side. Are you crazy? The child is still in my hands, what if he gets hurt? Feng Ji's attack just now. If he had been just a little slower. He wasn't the only one who was severely injured. Even this child would suffer a calamity. Did she hate and loathe him that much? You don't even care about your own child? That's my child. What I do has nothing to do with you. Feng Ji's words were cold and emotionless. Bloodbone Barbarian King, don't think that I don't know the reason why you won't return my child to me. She gripped her sword tightly, and the edge of the sword shone with a cold light. Isn't it because of that Divine Phoenix profound heart jade in her body? Feng Gu spat out word by word. His tone was filled with ridicule. Unfortunately, you've miscalculated something. The so-called Divine Phoenix profound heart jade is something that only the next Divine Emperor has the qualifications to use. Even if you hold the child in your hands, you still won't be able to display the true use of the Divine Phoenix profound heart jade. The blood-bone barbaric monarch's face turned darker and darker as the woman continued to speak. His expression also became extremely ugly. The surrounding atmosphere fell into an icy cold state. At this moment, Yiqing Luo, who was sprawled on the huge rock. Her entire body was icy cold. Her heart was pounding violently. Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. That baby's body contained the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. Chapter 45:16. Yiqing Luo's hand slowly pressed onto her own heart. This place, there was also a Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. She held her breath. There was an idea forming in her mind. But she didn't dare to think too much about it. He didn't dare to think about it. But his mind kept repeating the same words over and over again. The baby's body contained the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. In her body there was the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. In this world would 2 Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jades appear? She suppressed the surging emotions in her chest and looked down again. His gaze unconsciously fell on Fenggu. The Emperor of Divine Emperors, blood-bone barbaric king, quickly give me the child. Feng Ji's stern voice interrupted Yiqing Luo's thoughts. At this moment Feng Ji's eyes were overflowing with hostility. There was no trace of her usual gentleness and elegance. The barbaric blood-bone king tightened his grip on the baby in his arms. His expression was cold. What did you just say? The Profound Heart Jade in this child's body is the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. Don't play dumb. If you didn't know the use of this child, why didn't you give him to me? Fenggu sneered. The barbaric blood-bone king's face turned ashen. He gnashed his teeth and glared at Chu Yang. You asked me for this child because of this Profound Heart Jade? Feng Ji's eyes were full of disdain. Don't look at me like that. It's like I'm sorry. This is my child. I can do whatever I want. It has nothing to do with you. She waved her sword. The sharp blade shone with dazzling cold light under the reflection of the mystic light. Bloodbone Barbarian King, the current you, is no match for me. The barbaric Bloodbone King's pupils suddenly contracted and he looked down at the child in his arms. You, what do you mean by this? Fenggu smiled coldly. Don't think that I don't know the consequences of using the forbidden skill. The pupils of the barbaric Bloodbone King contracted even more. Yes, after casting the forbidden technique, he would have to pay an equivalent price. There was no end to using forbidden techniques and cultivating forbidden techniques to make himself stronger. However, ever since he was injured by Fenggu, after the baby was born, since then he had never touched the forbidden art again. The reason he cultivated the forbidden technique was to protect Fenggu. He wanted to dispel the restless factors that had ulterior motives towards the child in Feng Ji's womb. Later on, it was meaningless. Moreover, Feng Ji's child was born. After that, to the outside world, he was a dead man, sealed in the heaven realm, unable to go anywhere. He had no intention of continuing to practice forbidden techniques. Therefore, correspondingly, he needed to bear the pain of the backlash caused by the forbidden technique. The current him. Perhaps in the heaven realm he could be considered an expert. However, in the God world it was simply not enough. Not to mention that his opponent was the Emperor of the Divine Emperors. Furthermore, in the end he could not bear to hurt her. Whether it was in the past or now, he was no match for Fenggu. Give me the child. Seeing that the blood-bone barbarian king did not respond after a long time, Fenggu had already lost his patience. He raised his long sword and thrust it towards the blood-bone barbarian king. The barbaric blood-bone king was still immersed in his own thoughts and did not react at all, until the murderous long sword swept past his eyes. Only then did he suddenly react and raise his head. The sharp long sword was coming towards his face. Subconsciously, the barbaric blood-bone king held the child in his arms tightly and quickly avoided the incoming murderous aura. End of this chapter. Chapter 45:17. Oh. But the long sword still brushed past his arm, causing a huge wound. Fresh blood splattered all over the ground. Bloodbone Barbaric King quickly took 2 steps back as he stared at Fenggu with an ugly expression. Give me the child. Fenggu gritted her teeth. Her eyes were filled with malevolence as she swiftly attacked Bloodbone Barbaric King. That move after move was completely merciless. She really wanted to kill him and snatch the child. Bloodbone Barbaric King's heart was throbbing in pain, as though he had returned to the past. The scene when she injured him. Her coldness, her ridicule, all her murderous intent towards him. Wah! Bloodbone Barbaric King was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of heart blood. The blood stained his robe. However, he still firmly protected the baby in his arms, not allowing the baby to be stained by the blood in the slightest. The two of them fought each other just like that, back and forth. From the beginning to the end, Bloodbone Barbaric King only avoided swiftly. Whereas Feng Ji's attacks were swift and violent, her target was the baby. Yiqing Luo, who was on top of the huge rock, felt strange as she watched the scene below. She couldn't explain the strangeness. Only, she felt that something was amiss. Feng Ji's goal was very clear: to get the baby back. However, her attacks were too fierce and ruthless. As though she was totally not worried that she would hurt her own child. While Bloodbone Barbaric King, his expression was very unsightly. The gaze he used to look at Feng Gu was filled with unfamiliarity. He was trying his best to protect the child in his arms. Every subconscious action of hers was to protect the child tightly. Yiqing Luo was sure. Bloodbone Barbaric King was unwilling to give the baby to Feng Gu, not because of the so-called Divine Phoenix's profound jade heart. It was from his heart, protecting the baby. But Feng Gu, her actions were too strange. Ya. At this moment, the attack below stirred up waves, setting off thousands of waves. Yellow sand flew everywhere and the ground cracked. It almost blinded Yiqing Luo's eyes. Vaguely, Yiqing Luo saw Bloodbone Barbaric King's body flying out. The baby in his hands also flew out. The little baby was still completely unaware of the current situation. It waved its little hands in the air and squeaked. When Feng Gu saw the child being thrown out, a greedy smile appeared on his face. She threw herself at the baby. She reached out to catch the child. Suddenly, bang! The ground shook violently. Profound waves surged as if they were sweeping up the yellow sand that filled the sky. Rocks tumbled down. Feng Ji's body was shaken by this sudden movement, causing her to lose her balance. In the blink of an eye, bloody bones that looked like spider webs suddenly emerged from the ground all around him. He quickly caught the baby. Then he brought it to the Bloodbone Barbarian King's head. He didn't know if it was an illusion. Yiqing Luo looked over from this distance. He had a feeling that the Bloodbone Barbarian Monarch's blood bones were different from before. The amount of red liquid on the bloody bones was decreasing. That frighteningly cold aura was also extremely weak. Below, the barbaric Bloodbone King took the baby back into his arms. The Bloodbone Barbarian King quickly formed a shield, blocking in front of Feng Gu. Do you know why I'm unwilling to hand the child over to you? Bloodbone Barbaric King's voice was deep and hoarse. The gaze he gave to Feng Gu became increasingly sinister. Chapter 45:18. The baby that was in her hands flew away again. Feng Ji's face darkened. She stared at the barbaric Blood King with a murderous look. Her eyes were filled with mockery and murderous intent. What? Are you not willing to show your ugly face in front of me? But now, for this child with the Divine Phoenix's profound heart jade, you don't care about your image in my heart? What do I have to worry about with the current you? The barbaric Bloodbone King sneered as the corners of his mouth twitched. Yes. In the past, he had never dared to show such an ugly and terrifying face in front of Feng Gu. He would never let Feng Gu see a single bone in his body. In front of Feng Gu, he would always maintain his human form. But now there was no need. The sanguineous bones were wriggling in all directions. The barbaric Blood King's upper body was human, and he held the baby tightly in his arms. The lower half of his body was covered with bloody bones. His face was still as handsome as ever. Feng Ji's face was solemn, and her poisonous gaze was locked on the barbaric Blood King. She seemed to be very dissatisfied with his attitude. The barbaric Blood King's hand gently stroked the baby's delicate skin. His thin lips curled up slightly. His face was very pale due to the loss of blood. Back then, you were the one who sent the child to me, and now you want to take him away just like that. What do you think I am? The barbaric Blood King stared into her eyes and said word by word, Feng Gu, in your heart, I have always been a tool to be used, right? He did not want to give the baby to Feng Gu because he could not accept Feng Ji's attitude towards him. Back then he did not allow her to explain at all. He gave the child that she had with another man to him, the person who loved her deeply. Now, without any explanation, he came to ask for the child. And his attitude was terrible, and he even tried to snatch it. In Feng Ji's heart, what was he? Hearing the barbaric Blood King's words, Feng Ji's eyes were even more vicious. She sneered. Yes, I am using you as a tool. After all, you are very useful, aren't you? You like me and you do whatever I ask you to do. I just casually lied to you and you're willing to give up your life for me. These were obviously extremely touching words. But it came out of Feng Ji's mouth. It was bone-chilling cold. Feng Gu sneered. He sneered at the Bloodbone Barbarian King's reckless sacrifice. Because I know you like me, so you will fulfill my request unconditionally. Do you feel very sad? Feng Gu sneered. Give me the child. This will be the last time we meet. I will never appear in front of you again. You don't have to worry that you will be used by me again. Feng Ji's words were sharp and sarcastic. The barbaric blood-bone king's expression did not change at all, until she finished her last sentence. The man, whose gaze had been fixed on the baby's face, finally let out a low chuckle. He slowly raised his head. His pale and handsome face was filled with malevolence and madness. He smiled. His smile was strange and treacherous. He looked at Feng Gu and his words were bone-chilling. You want a child, don't you? Unfortunately, I will not let you get what you want. As soon as he finished his words, the baby in his hand was thrown into the air. In an instant, it was densely packed with bloody bones. It was engulfed. Barbaric blood-bone king. Feng Ji's eyes were bloodshot because of the sudden change. She screamed the barbaric blood-bone king's name. Her voice was extremely sharp. Chapter 45:19. Barbaric blood-bone king actually. He had used the forbidden technique he had cultivated, to use the infant as nourishment and devour it. How dare you? How dare you touch my child? Feng Ji's sharp voice was filled with rage. She waved her long sword and slashed downwards. The majestic, terrifying, profound ray was about to destroy the heaven and earth. The entire barren mountain began to sink into the ground. The huge rock which Yi Qing Luo was lying on was not spared. She hurriedly steadied herself on the huge rock. Just as she moved, the rock broke apart and fell downwards. Yi Qing Luo took a few steps back to avoid the cracks and tried to find a foothold again. Not right. Something was definitely not right. Feng Ji's madness earlier was not because she was worried about the child. No. It was not that she was not worried. But her tone and attitude was not that kind of worry. Not the grief and anger of a mother who had lost her child. Instead it was like discovering water in the desert and spending so much effort to reach the destination, only to discover that everything was an illusion. That kind. The anger of losing what she had spent so much effort to obtain. There was no pain or sadness. As for barbaric blood-bone king, it was even stranger. He actually treated the baby as nourishment and absorbed it into his blood-bone. His feelings for the baby. She saw it very clearly. That was absolutely not fake true feelings. How could it be possible to swallow the baby? Furthermore, barbaric blood-bone king swallowed the baby's words. Had it been verified as well? That baby who possessed the divine phoenix profound jade heart was actually not the same person as her? The baby who had been swallowed was already dead. She was alive and well now. And the most important point was, the God Emperor had passed away and her era was at least 10,000 years apart. 10,000 years. Wasn't she an old demon? Looked like the only explanation was, she might really not be that baby. Just as Yi Qing Luo was avoiding the huge rock collapse, the two of them below were already locked in a fierce battle. Barbaric blood-bone king had already fallen into a disadvantageous position in the battle, no matter how cold his words were. But when they really started to fight, he unknowingly avoided a direct confrontation with Feng Gu. But the more they exchanged blows, the barbaric blood-bone king could clearly see Feng Ji's twisted face. The horror in his eyes was filled with venom. Feng Gu was completely different from the Feng Gu in his memories. It was just like, they were not the same person at all. In the blink of an eye, Feng Ji's sword swept past and pierced straight into the blood-bone barbarian king's chest. When the sword pierced through his heart, he could still see the disdain and anger in Feng Ji's eyes. Intense pain and dizziness caused by excessive blood loss. He could no longer maintain the form of a blood bone. She fainted and fell to the ground. While he was unconscious, he vaguely heard the woman's cold and ruthless words, I spent so much effort to create this vessel, and it was destroyed just like that. Damn it. Container? What container? The barbaric blood-bone king couldn't think any further and sunk into darkness. Feng Gu looked at the unconscious blood-bone barbarian king. The sword in his hand was about to pierce through his heart. Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, his movements paused. There was a cruel sneer in his eyes. She threw the sword on the ground. Destroying my vessel, how can I let you die so easily? There's a place that is absolutely suitable for you. Feng Gu directly carried the barbaric blood-bone king on her shoulder. The breeze blew the red veil on Feng Ji's face, revealing the red veil, that face which had been covered. Chapter 45:20. Her red lips were like fire, absolutely gorgeous. Exquisite facial features, bright and elegant, coupled with that pair of soul-stirring eyes. The entire person was breathtakingly beautiful. Bright and flamboyant, almost able to overshadow everything in the world. Yi Qing Luo's pupils constricted fiercely. Her body stiffened as well. Because that face that came into view was almost the same as her. Yes. The degree of similarity was at least 80% and above. Except that Yi Qing Luo looked more immature and beautiful, whereas Feng Gu had the maturity and beauty of a woman. What was going on? Yi Qing Luo subconsciously touched her own face. Countless thoughts were surging in her mind. A face that was almost the same. Feng Ji's daughter had a divine phoenix profound jade heart. She had it too. Could it be? Was she really that little baby? But wasn't that baby swallowed by the barbaric blood-bone king? 10,000 years had passed. How could she possibly grow up in Nirvana Realm's Three Springs sect? This wasn't right. The time didn't match. Yi Qing Luo's thoughts were in a mess. These thoughts made her heart beat extremely fast. Actually, she had guessed this from the beginning. However, he had never associated himself with the God Emperor's true body. No. This was too confusing. She really couldn't make sense of this relationship. Yi Qing Luo rubbed her face, her gaze suddenly fell on her wrist, that circle of cherry blossom petals. Her hand pressed on the azure dew bracelet. Right. Look for Old Man Song. Old Man Song had seen the Sovereign of God before. He was clearer than anyone else about what happened 10,000 years ago. But no matter how Yi Qing Luo called for Old Man Song, her and Old Man Song's spirit could not connect at all. But her azure dew bracelet was not affected. On this side, Yi Qing Luo was still in shock. On the other side, Feng Gu had dragged the barbaric blood-bone king away. Yi Qing Luo clenched her fists, thinking of that face under Feng Ji's veil. She leaped up and quickly chased up to Feng Gu. Feng Ji's eyes were cold, her eyes were filled with killing intent, dragging the barbaric blood-bone king at an extremely fast speed. Yi Qing Luo was worried that she would be discovered by Feng Gu and wanted to follow behind. For a moment he could not keep up with the two people in front of him. After Feng Ji's figure completely disappeared from the range of his senses, Yi Qing Luo blacked out. Immediately after, his body trembled. When there was light in front of him again, she was already deep in the mountains and deep in the forest. In front of him was a huge black hole that surged with thick black fog. It looked extremely horrifying and terrifying. In front of him were Feng Gu and the barbaric blood-bone king. Yi Qing Luo was slightly stunned. That feeling just now didn't feel like the feeling of jumping to the next memory. Moreover, the two people in front of him were also in the scene just now. What was going on? Do you see what that is? Feng Gu threw the blood-bone barbarian king to the ground. The blood-bone barbarian king had already woken up from the jolting. He opened his somewhat turbid eyes and looked at the black holes that filled the sky. His expression changed slightly. Feng Gu smiled coldly, his eyes filled with ruthlessness. Do you think that it's so easy to swallow the container that I've tried so hard to get? Letting you die is letting you off too easily. Her long sword moved and directly stabbed into the barbaric blood-bone king's shoulder, hanging him up. The barbaric blood-bone king groaned in pain. Blood seeped out from his shoulder, soaking his robe. But he was stubborn and refused to make a sound. A pair of eyes filled with hatred stared fiercely at Feng Gu. End of this chapter. Chapter 45-21. Hate me? Feng Gu sneered, don't you love me to death? When she said this, her eyes were filled with disdain. As though she disdained his feelings. Or as though she was extremely disdainful of his love for her. Blood-bone barbaric king was in so much pain that his vision blurred. He gritted his teeth and groaned word by word, now I know. How silly I was in the past, to actually like a slut like you for so many years. So much that he didn't even care about his life, causing himself to end up in such a state. Then you're not too stupid, at least now you know my true colors. Feng Gu seemed to be very happy, her eyes were filled with coldness. You'd better kill me. Otherwise, I will definitely kill you. Blood-bone barbaric king gritted his teeth and roared. But he had lost too much blood and the pain in his body. It made him almost speechless. Feng Gu looked at him coldly, the corners of her lips curled into a cold arc. Kill you? Of course I can't kill you. She pointed to the front at the sky full of black holes. This is something I specially made in the Nirvana realm. It's still in the experimental stage. Help me? Guard this place well. Feng Gu casually threw him into that black hole. Blood-bone barbaric king groaned, and was thrown into the black hole. Instantly, countless black chi gushed out from that black hole. Like thousands of hands, grabbing hold of Blood-Bone Barbaric King and swallowing him. Blood-Bone Barbaric King's shrill scream was heard from the black hole. Those blood-curdling screams. It made one's heart tremble. Yi Qing Luo's heart also trembled. Blood-Bone Barbaric King was an especially tolerant person. Even the long sword pierced through his chest. He didn't even make a sound when the long sword pierced into his shoulder and lifted him up. But when he was thrown into the black hole, he let out a blood-curdling scream that showed the pain in the black hole. It was an unbearable pain for him. Yi Qing Luo stared at Feng Ge without blinking. Her heart was still trembling. Feng Ji's eyes had no trace of emotion. It was as though she didn't care about anything about Blood-Bone Barbaric King. What was she trying to do? Who's that? Suddenly Feng Ji's eyes turned cold as she reprimanded. He raised his sword and flipped it in his palm. Yi Qing Luo instantly felt a chill down her spine. It was like being stared at by a venomous snake. It was bone-chilling. Her heart skipped a beat as she met Feng Ji's murderous gaze. She quickly backed away. However, how could her speed compare to the Divine Emperor's? In the blink of an eye, Feng Ji's long sword had already pierced her eyeball. Just then, when it was still a little distance away from the eyeball, Yi Qing Luo only felt her vision turning black. The surrounding space began to distort rapidly. As the ground shook, she felt as if she had fallen into an abyss. His whole body kept falling down. What was going on? Just now, it felt like he was jumping to the next part of his memory. Why was she falling from the sky in the next memory? Yi Qing Luo wanted to flop around. However, he could not move his limbs at all, until the restraints on his body were broken. Only then did her vision regain its brightness. However, right now she was floating in midair. Their surroundings were pitch black and they couldn't see their surroundings clearly. She tried to move. She discovered that she could actually walk in midair. It was like her soul was the same. What kind of situation was this? Bone Lord? Suddenly, a soft voice was heard from below. Yi Qing Luo was stunned as she swiftly floated towards the voice. Chapter 45-22. In front of her, it was a piece of black sea. Two figures were moving bit by bit as they walked in the black sea. Walking. See? No. Not right. This was not the sea. Yi Qing Luo's figure slowly leaned downwards. He could clearly see the figures of those people. They were that lady called Gu San and Gu Yi, Blood-Bone Barbaric King's secret guards. These two of them were of course not those few secret guards that Yi Qing Luo had interacted with in the outside world. The Gu residence's secret guards were ranked according to their numbers. This batch of secret guards should be the earliest batch of secret guards that followed the Blood-Bone Barbaric King. Bone Lord, where are you? Gu San called out softly. Looking at his expression, he seemed to be struggling. Yi Qing Luo carefully avoided the two of them and landed at a position slightly behind the both of them. She could see clearly. The surroundings were not a piece of black sea. It was obviously a ball of thick black fog, a piece of pitch-black darkness. There was no place to hide. She could only maintain a distance as she followed behind those two secret guards. The two secret guards' attention had been focused on searching for the Blood-Bone Barbaric King and did not notice anything strange. Just at this moment, suddenly there were a few cracking sounds in front of him. She saw the entire sky filled with thick black fog. One by one, the blood-colored bones stepped out. Kacha-kacha. Even her ears were filled with the sound of the bones colliding. Yi Qing Luo then saw it clearly. Under the thick black, there was a large patch of densely packed blood bones. And her surroundings were also covered with large patches of blood bones. But what shocked her was her body penetrated through every single blood bone. The densely packed, connected blood bones all passed through her body, as though they could not sense her existence at all. Yi Qing Luo stretched out her hand to touch the blood bones. Her hand went through the blood bones. Yi Qing Luo's heart thumped. Her gaze swiftly turned towards the Gu residence's secret guards. Was it these blood bones an illusion? Or was it her problem? Following the densely packed blood bones appearing, Gu Yi and Gu San's searching footsteps stopped. Gu San raised his head, looking at the blood bones that were almost as tall as a two-story building, his eyes filled with worry. Bone Lord, why are you looking for us? The two Bone Mansion secret guards stood away from the bloody bones. They also seemed to be very afraid of touching the blood bones. Kacha, kacha. Along with the sound of bones cracking, a head slowly slid down the joints and appeared in front of the two of them. It was the head of the barbaric Blood-Bone King. His face was pale and his eyes were filled with malice. He was like a trapped beast, so gloomy that it made people's hearts tremble. "Take this out." The blood-bone barbarian king's hoarse voice sounded. A small baby wrapped in a soft substance was thrown into the arms of Bone San. Gu San hurriedly received it. Then she looked at the baby in her arms. His cheeks were pink and he looked like he was sleeping peacefully. Her eyes reddened. "Bone Lord, you spent so much effort to get in touch with us just to let us bring the child out?" Gu San's voice was choked with emotion. "Get out," the barbaric blood-bone king shouted sternly. Gu San hugged the baby tightly. His eyes were red as he looked at the barbaric blood-bone king's current appearance. "This child is the child of the Emperor of God. You became like this because of the Emperor of God. Bone Lord, why do you have to hurt yourself like this for her child? You don't want to listen to this God's words?" The barbaric blood-bone king's voice became hoarser and sharper. After this loud shout, he couldn't stop coughing violently. Chapter 45-23. Bone Monarch. Bone 1 hurriedly said, "Bone 3 is just concerned about you." Back then Bone Lord did not devour this baby. Instead he hid it in his own blood and bones. Feng Gu was deceived. When he was thrown into the black hole by Feng Gu, not only did Bone Lord have to fight against the evil aura in the black hole, but he also had to fight against it. He also had to protect the baby as much as possible. Until now, only then did Bone Lord have enough power to establish contact with the dark guards of the Bone Residence. It was not easy for them to rush to the Nirvana realm and the black hole that was suppressing the Bone Lord. Bone Lord's request was not for them to think of a way to break the seal on the black hole and rescue him. Instead he asked them to leave with the baby. See the baby. They would think of the culprit who caused their Bone Lord to be reduced to such a state. How could they be willing to take their children out? "You have no right to tell me what to do." The barbaric blood-bone monarch's voice became sharper. The blood and bones around them tightly wrapped around the two of them. "Take the child out and take good care of him. Don't hand it over to anyone." The two realized the blood-bone barbarian monarch's intention and immediately said, "Bone Monarch, tell us, is there any way to save you? We can't take care of this child." Bang! Before the two of them could finish their conversation, he was lifted up by the blood-bone barbarian king and thrown out of the thick black fog. After a while, silence returned to the surroundings. The barbaric blood-bone king also did not move for a long time. Yiqing Luo saw the pain in his eyes. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips slightly. He slowly walked towards the blood-bone barbarian king. He was not worried that the barbaric blood-bone king would discover him. For this place, she was just a soul. The Bone Mansion's secret guards could touch the blood-bone barbarian king's blood bones. And she couldn't. She could float around in this place. This meant that she no longer had a physical body. As expected, she approached the blood-bone barbarian king. The barbaric blood-bone king did not move either. The skull embedded in the bloody bone looked like a statue. Until Yiqing Luo approached. Only then did he vaguely hear a few sounds. "Qing Luo? Qing Luo? Qing Luo?" Yiqing Luo's heart immediately tightened. His eyes widened. What the barbaric blood-bone king shouted was her name. Just as she was about to lean in closer to hear more clearly, a voice suddenly rang out. Suddenly, her hand felt like it was being sucked by a huge suction force. She didn't have time to react. His body was suddenly sucked up by the suction force. Then his body fell heavily to the ground. The feeling of weightlessness made Yiqing Luo cry out in shock. Suddenly he opened his eyes. What greeted his eyes was a patch of dazzling sunlight. It stung her eyes and hurt a little. She raised her hand to cover her eyes. A large palm covered her eyes. His slender fingers massaged her eyes with just the right amount of strength. The familiar scent of sandalwood seeped into his nose. Yiqing Luo's hands grabbed that huge palm as she turned around abruptly. She saw the face that she longed for even in her dreams. Her face was reflected in his obsidian-like eyes. Yiqing Luo's eyes widened. Ah, Xian. The person in front of her was Diamo Xian. She raised her hand and pinched Diamo Xian's cheek, giving him a hard pinch. Are you real? Surely I'm not still in the memory space, right? Chapter 45-24. Diamo Xian laughed softly. His long slender hand held her little hand and clasped it in his palm. "You're back." He held on to her hand and slowly placed it on his face. "Finally back." He murmured softly as he slowly closed his eyes. Feeling her scent, her warmth. Men rarely showed such a harmless expression on her face. Yiqing Luo's heart was in a mess. from the man's big palm helping her to rub her eyes, from his aura enveloping her body and mind. She was certain. This Diamo-Xian. He was her Xian. She had returned to the real world. This was no longer the barbaric blood-bone king's memory. Yiqing Luo's eyes gazed deeply at the man's elegant face. His picturesque eyebrows revealed an obvious tired look. His thick eyelashes spread out, casting an arc, but it was unable to hide the purple under his eyes. How long had she stayed in the barbaric blood-bone king's memory? This man, how long had he been looking for her? Yiqing Luo's hand slowly covered his eyes. Xian, I'm sorry I made you worried. I know nothing will happen. Diamo-Xian closed her hand and placed it by his lips as he gently kissed it. I just miss. Knowing that nothing would happen to her was one thing. Worrying was another. I miss too. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a sweet smile as she generously sent her lips over and kissed him. Diamo-Xian's arms wrapped around her petite body, until the young lady gave a low laugh and that soft little tongue drilled into his mouth. His body shook. He suddenly pressed the back of the young lady's head and deepened the kiss. Their breaths intertwined. Like a life and death entanglement. They used their own way to declare their longing for each other. After some time, Diamo-Xian then released the young lady and hugged her tightly in his arms. Yiqing Luo could clearly hear the man's strong and powerful heartbeat. Once. From her eardrums, it penetrated her heart. Yiqing Luo's brows curved as her little hand followed his waist and slowly slid down. I thought that you wouldn't be able to restrain yourself and continue to do some overboard things. Diamo-Xian clasped her hand, his eyes filled with warning. Don't stir up the fire if you continue. I don't care if I'm tired or not. Yiqing Luo hurriedly retracted her hand and pushed her little head against his chest. I'm tired, I'm so tired that I can't move, I can't take advantage of others' difficulties. Her hands were no longer messy. His little head began to rub against the fire. Diamo-Xian looked at the furry little head in his arms as a helpless yet pampering smile flashed past his eyes. He held the girl's delicate body tightly and stopped her from teasing him any further. If you tease me again, I'll take it that you want it. Yiqing Luo giggled as she stuck her head out from his arms and circled her arms around his neck. All right, I won't tease you anymore. Isn't it so hard to see you I'm happy? Diamo-Xian bit her nose and his low and hoarse voice revealed a bewitching magnetism. Now let's play tonight? Let's try. Yiqing Luo's cheeks blushed slightly. The two of them joked around for a while. The warm and sweet atmosphere made Yiqing Luo's exhausted heart finally find peace. She leaned into Diamo-Xian's arms as she played with his slender fingers and asked casually, That's right, the one who entered the ancestral hall with me was that Palace Lord Ming from Secluded Palace, have you seen him? Download address, phone reading. Chapter 45-25. Diamo-Xian lowered his head and bit her earlobe. The strength between his lips and teeth was a little strong. Yiqing Luo felt itchy and painful, her body was still trembling slightly. Just asking a question and you need to be jealous? Please let me go, please let me go, listening to the young girl's soft pleading. The man then let go of her earlobe. But, his thin lips were still attached to her ear. Between the rubbing of the lips, there was a scorching heat. He came out from the ancestral hall 2 days ago. Diamo-Xian's voice sounded a little low, as if he was in a bad mood. He was also the one who told me that he had entered the blood-bone barbaric king's memory. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes and clicked her tongue. Looks like Baisu really hates me. Baisu? Diamo-Xian frowned slightly. What has it got to do with Baisu? Yiqing Luo pounced on him and pressed him under her body. What exactly is the relationship between you and Baisu? Diamo-Xian supported her and let her lie firmly in his arms. He looked down at her and asked, What did Baisu do? Answer my question first. Yiqing Luo climbed up his chest and both her hands pinched his face. After you answer my question, I will then know what kind of tone I should use to complain. Diamo-Xian's pupils contracted slightly. He held Yiqing Luo's slender waist. In his heart he had roughly guessed something. But he still followed Yiqing Luo's words. To me she is both a teacher and a friend. Since I have memories she has been by my side like an elder sister, teaching me a lot, how to survive in this world. Since you have memories? Yiqing Luo caught the main point. Amnesia? Not considered as amnesia. Diamo-Xian shook his head, just can't remember the things in the past. But those to me are not important. How can it not be important? Yiqing Luo sat up straight, her little but sat on his stomach, both hands clutching his lapel. I said, I don't seem to have heard anything about family. You've actually forgotten about it? Don't you want to know who is your father? Don't want to find them and ask why they separated? The girl lowered her head and met his eyes. Her soft silky black hair cascaded down and landed on Diamo Xian's body and face. His hand gently rested on the young girl's slender waist as he gently curled his lips into a smile. With Lil Luo heir by my side, it is enough. He did not have much need for his past memories. He thought about what had happened in the past. To him it was not difficult at all. It was just that he didn't want to and couldn't be bothered to think about it. In his memory, having Lil Luo heir was his greatest happiness. The man's words instantly softened Yiqing Luo's heart. She pursed her lips and patted his chest weakly. You only know how to seduce me with words of love and move me. I can't beat you. Diamo Xian pinched her waist. Now can you tell me what happened between you and Baisu? Yiqing Luo pouted her lips and snorted. Even if Baisu is a teacher and a friend, I still want to complain. She rambled on and on about how Bai Mei had been deceived by the Palace of Gloomy Shadows and used as a sacrifice to unlock the barbaric Bloodbone King's memories. She also complained about Baisu's attitude towards her in an aggrieved manner. After that she hammered his chest. You had to wait for the Palace Lord of Gloomy Shadows to tell you, only then did you know that I was in the Ancestral Hall. Baisu saw me entering the barbaric Bloodbone King's memories with her own eyes, so she obviously did not tell you on purpose. Download address, phone reading. Chapter 45-26. Diamo Xian held her hand as his eyes turned extremely gloomy. I met her at the Ancestral Hall. Yiqing Luo pretended to put on a fierce expression as she snorted lightly. See, she did it on purpose. Yes, she told me that she only saw that person from secluded palace in the Ancestral Hall, and had never seen you. Diamo Xian's expression turned darker and darker. He put his arm around the girl's waist. He slowly sat up straight. Yiqing Luo wrapped her arms around his neck. Do you believe me or her? I believe you. Diamo Xian replied without any hesitation as he placed a hand on her waist and said word by word, Lil Luo, to me, you are more important than anything else. He slightly lowered his eyes, and a trace of coldness flashed across his eyes. Baisu? He hadn't thought about it. One day, he and Baisu would end up like this. Baisu was doing this for Bai Mei. He hated his little Luo, even when he knew that Lil Luo was in danger. She even hid everything from him. Yes, Baisu is too much. Yiqing Luo pinched his face, putting on a fiendish look. So, this can totally offset the fact that she thinks that I hate Bai Mei for not saving her. Diamo Xian was slightly stunned. Lil Luo, His hand from her waist held both of her hands. Yiqing Luo gave a snort as she maintained her fierce look. This time it has already been cancelled out. If there's a next time and she still wants to use Bai Mei's death to bicker in front of me, I want you to make a choice out of two, do you hear me? Diamo Xian's eyes turned cold when he mentioned Baisu. At this moment, it had transformed into a layer of warmth. His obsidian-like peach blossom eyes were exceptionally gentle. He raised his hand and stroked the young girl's hair, gently tucking it to her ear. Lil Luo heir. His Lil Luo, really, made him unable to extricate himself from loving her. The so-called complaint. The so-called fierceness. They were just doing it on purpose to give Baisu a way out. Yiqing Luo had never really wanted Diamo Xian to stand up for her and do something to Baisu. She just used this way. She wanted to resolve the grudge between her and Baisu. If Baisu was still clear-headed, she would know what to choose. Yiqing Luo threw herself into his arms. Alright, this matter, let's end it like this, but I've made it clear there's no next time. Diamo Xian held her waist tightly. Outside the window, a ghost-like shadow floated lightly. Like a kite with a broken string, it swayed unsteadily, unable to find its way. The illusory shadow seemed like it was about to be blown away by the wind. All of a sudden, a slender figure appeared behind the shadow. That person sneered. His eyes under the black robe revealed a hint of coldness. Do you regret it? Do you regret getting yourself into such a situation? The shadow did not turn around. He just stood there quietly. He looked in the direction of the Ancestral Hall as his thoughts drifted. That person continued to sneer. She is such a person. To outsiders, she is cold and ruthless, decisive in killing. But once it involves the people she cares about, she is kinder than anyone else. You hurt her like this, but she still forgave you and even found an excuse to stop the Overlord from taking action against you. You can say that she has put in a lot of effort. Shut up. That illusory shadow's delicate body swayed. She raised her head slightly, her face was cold. You palace of darkness. Don't think that I don't know that the direct cause of my sister's death is all because of you. End of this chapter. Chapter 45-27. That person looked at the shadow indifferently, his face filled with hatred. He scoffed lightly, you should be the clearest about why Bai Mei died. Yi Qing Luo not saving her is within reason, so you have no right to blame her. Bai Su stared unblinkingly at the palace lord of secluded darkness palace who was clad in a black robe and surrounded by black qi as she suddenly sneered, Are you speaking up for Yi Qing Luo? Do I need to speak up for her? The man sneered. You heard what she said to Di Zun just now. You know what kind of person she is. Bai Su pursed her lips tightly. Her smoke-like shadow was so dim that it almost melted into the air. After a long while, she then looked coldly at the palace master of Gloomy Palace and gritted her teeth. Don't let me run into you. Otherwise, I won't let a single one of you off. As soon as he finished speaking, her body had already turned into a puff of white smoke, completely disappearing in front of the palace master of secluded darkness palace. Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian cuddled for a while. With great difficulty she managed to suppress Dmo Xian's thoughts of parting ways with Baisu. The two of them walked out of the room. Xiao Chun looked at the familiar scene in the bone residence. It was somewhat similar to the scene in the savage blood-bone monarch's memory, yet it was also different. She was still in a daze. Until Dmo Xian wrapped his arms around her waist and asked her gently. Only then did she regain her senses. What are you thinking about? Dmo Xian asked as he pulled her towards the main hall. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes fluttered. I'm thinking about the blood-bone barbaric king. I'm sleepy. Typing is a little slow. I have to repeat 500 words. I'll edit it in 10 minutes, moi. That person looked at the shadow indifferently, his face filled with hatred. He scoffed lightly, you should be the clearest about why Bai Mei died. Yi Qing Luo not saving her is within reason, so you have no right to blame her. Bai Su stared unblinkingly at the palace lord of secluded darkness palace who was clad in a black robe and surrounded by black qi as she suddenly sneered, Are you speaking up for Yi Qing Luo? Do I need to speak up for her? The man sneered. You heard what she said to Di Zun just now. You know what kind of person she is. Bai Su pursed her lips tightly. Her smoke-like shadow was so dim that it almost melted into the air. After a long while, she then looked coldly at the palace master of Gloomy Palace and gritted her teeth. Don't let me run into you. Otherwise, I won't let a single one of you off. As soon as he finished speaking, her body had already turned into a puff of white smoke, completely disappearing in front of the palace master of secluded darkness palace. Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian cuddled for a while. With great difficulty she managed to suppress Dmo Xian's thoughts of parting ways with Baisu. The two of them walked out of the room. Xiao Chun looked at the familiar scene in the bone residence. It was somewhat similar to the scene in the savage blood-bone monarch's memory, yet it was also different. She was still in a daze. Until Dmo Xian wrapped his arms around her waist and asked her gently. Only then did she regain her senses. What are you thinking about? Dmo Xian pulled her towards the main hall as he asked. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes fluttered. Thinking about the savage blood-bone monarch. Until Dmo Xian wrapped his arms around her waist and asked her gently. She then regained her senses. What are you thinking about? Dmo Xian pulled her towards the main hall as he asked. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes fluttered. Thinking about the savage blood-bone monarch. Chapter 45-28. A trace of helplessness and pampering flashed past Dmo Xian's eyes as he tapped her forehead. I've actually been coaxed out by you. Yi Qing Luo pinched his face. No choice, who asked me to be so smart? She smiled and leaned her head against his chest. A faint smile appeared in his eyes. Xian, it was really cute. She knew. In actual fact, Dmo Xian was not because she had coaxed the information out of him. It was just that he did not intend to hide it from her. He understood her. He knew that she already knew most of the things that had happened. Even if he didn't admit it. Basically, she could confirm her guess. He pretended to be tricked into answering. He was only cooperating with her on purpose, helping her confirm the guess in her heart. She lazily leaned into Dmo Xian's embrace, her legs climbing towards the man's tall and straight body. I don't want to go anymore, hug me. Dmo Xian hooked his arm around the young lady's body as she wriggled around him, holding her firmly in his arms. Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes comfortably, like a contented kitten. Diamo Xian carried her and strode towards the direction of the hall. Ah Xian, how much do you know? Yiqing Luo's eyes were still closed and her voice was very soft. Diamo Xian lowered his head and looked at the young lady's exquisite face as his pupils deepened. More than you, what do you want to know? What I can be sure of now is that I am the child that the divine emperor gave birth to back then. That baby back then was me. She paused, opened her eyes and looked at the man. The time when the divine emperor passed away was 10,000 years ago. When I entered the barbaric Blood-Bone King's memories, it was also 10,000 years ago. At that time there was no Three Springs sect and there were no so-called four major sections. Then, why would I appear in the Three Springs sect 10,000 years later? It didn't make sense at all. After she inherited this body, it had also fused with all the memories. She knew it clearly. He had grown up in the Three Springs sect. She couldn't understand the problem of time. In particular, the events of the past were obviously very complicated. It was only through the memories of the barbaric Blood-Bone King. She still couldn't figure out the real reason behind it. I don't know the answer to your question. Diamo Xian sighed softly. Initially, after confirming your relationship with the Divine Emperor, I had also guessed this reason. I think that since you haven't seen the real reason in the barbaric Blood-Bone King's memory space, it means that the barbaric Blood-Bone King himself doesn't know. Yiqing Luo nodded her head. The Blood-Bone Barbarian King was sealed in the black hole of the Nirvana realm by Fenggu. It was also the place where the Blood-Bone Barbarian King later built the Linglong Palace. The child was also handed over to the hidden guard of the Bone Residence. What happened after that? You really didn't know. After knowing your biological mother's identity, you still want to look for her? Diamo Xian's deep eyes faintly rippled with a faint light. Yiqing Luo's hand caressed his cheek. Don't you want me to investigate my own background? Diamo Xian paused for a moment and shook his head. It's not that I don't want to, I'm worried. The Divine Emperor's Emperor. The God Realm's Emperor, such a high and mighty position indeed makes one worry. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a faint smile, but her words were filled with laziness. She slightly straightened her body in Diamo Xian's arms and used both her hands to hold his face. But you are also very clear that even if I don't want to investigate, there will always be someone who will find me. Diamo Xian's eyes faintly surfaced a layer of extremely faint danger. Hurry up and read the latest updates. Chapter 45-29. Yiqing Luo's slender jade-like hand gently covered his eyes. Even if you're around, those people who are eyeing me covetously, are still eyeing me covetously. Diamo Xian grasped her wrist. His eyes, which were as deep as obsidian, stared unblinkingly at her face. He said firmly, I won't let those people hurt you. Yiqing Luo's brows curved slightly. I know. She looped her arms around Diamo Xian's neck once again and buried her entire body into the crook of his neck. Ah Xian, regarding my parentage, I will definitely investigate. I must investigate clearly what happened in the past. Saying that, she raised her head again, her eyes sparkling, revealing a confident look. I promise you in this process I will do my best not to let myself get hurt, and not to do anything that will make you worry. Perhaps it was the young lady's gaze was too sincere. Or perhaps it was the young lady's words, was too firm. Diamo Xian looked at the young lady in front of him, his stern expression finally, slowly softened. He sighed, the gaze which looked at Yiqing Luo, became increasingly tender and affectionate. Following that, he stretched out his arm to encircle the young lady's petite body, pressing her heavily into his arms. Come on, what you said, these words of yours have no credibility at all. Diamo Xian turned his head, his dark red thin lips, reflected a kiss on the young lady's delicate skin. You're always accompanied by danger and uncertain factors. To say that you don't cause trouble, it's impossible. The warm breath, the man's gentle magnetic, mellow voice, mellow like fine wine. It made Yiqing Luo's heart melted by half. I know you've been unwilling to say because my ability is not enough to know all these. Even if I know, it's something that I can't do anything about. The smile on the corners of her lips deepened. Narrow long eyes deeply gazed at Diamo Xian's face. But now, Ah Xian, I am very clear what I'm doing. I know myself because of this decision. What kind of situation will I face? I want to take a gamble, I want to bet on myself, I can. The young lady sentence after sentence, sonorous and forceful words. One had no choice but to believe in her determination. Diamo Xian's hands suddenly exerted force. The girl's delicate body was lifted up by his hands. He opened his mouth and bit down on the girl's pink lips. I will never refute your decision. As their lips and teeth intertwined, the man's low and hoarse voice came, "No matter what you want to do, I will accompany you." The man's rich sandalwood scent invaded her body and mind. The girl's eyes curved into crescents as she smiled, until the man let go of her. Only then did she say with a smile, "I know. It's because I have a strong backing like you that I can move forward fearlessly. You are my greatest motivation." Diamo Xian tightened his grip. His forehead pressed against hers. The tips of their noses were touching. Their breaths were tangled together. As he listened to the girl's gentle words, the lines on his face became increasingly gentle. "It's my honor to be able to support you." When the two of them arrived at the hall, it was already half an hour later. In the hall there was a large circle of people. One by one they wandered around the hall, poking at each other. Apparently they had waited for a long time. They heard footsteps. Everyone looked over at the same time. They saw the two of them who looked like conjoined twins. Yin Xiaoyi raised her hand and covered her eyes. "Let us off. The moment we're conjoined, you're already showing off your affection." Chapter 45-30. Yiqing Luo nestled in Diamo Xian's arms as she lazily tilted her head and looked at Yen Xiaoyi. "At this moment, shouldn't you be expressing concern for me?" Yen Xiaoyi took a look at Diamo Xian, who was walking over slowly. There was not the slightest trace of emotion on the man's cold face. She shrunk her neck and replied softly, "I can tell that you're fine just by looking at the overlord. What are you worried about?" If Yiqing Luo's body had any discomfort, how could Diamo Xian be as calm as he was now? Diamo Xian carried Yiqing Luo onto a chair and sat beside her. Soon after, Gu Yun served up a filling meal. Diamo Xian stood by the side and brought it to her lips. Yiqing Luo opened her mouth and ate a mouthful. She squinted her eyes in happiness. Everyone, they really shouldn't have chosen to meet Yiqing Luo on the day she woke up. This day obviously belonged to the venerable sovereign alone. Yiqing Luo ate a few mouthfuls and her stomach was no longer empty. Her body had also warmed up, and that was when she thought of them with great benevolence. "All right. How have you been these few days? Did the people from the outside forces or the Palace of Darkness do anything?" The few of them rolled their eyes. But he still answered Yiqing Luo's question. In the past few days there had been a lot of activity outside. However, this commotion was not because they had attacked the Gu residence. It was because of the Wind Cloud list. The Wind Cloud list had been held. Most of the factions that were watching the Gu residence shifted their attention to the honor roll. Only a small portion of people remained to guard the Gu residence. And this movement, it was because of the Palace of Darkness. The Wind Fame list this time round could be said to be extremely dangerous. Most people were seriously trying to use the Excellence list to climb to the top. A small number of people had already joined the Ren family's camp. In the second round of the Wind Cloud list, just as the people of the major forces were exhausted from the duel, a figure suddenly appeared. The people of the Ren clan in the arena took advantage of the break to attack the forces around them. By the time the other forces reacted, at least 100 elite profound practitioners had died. Instantly it caused countless backlash. All the major forces joined forces to demand an explanation from the Ren family. The horses of the Ren family descended from the sky. They started killing right away. Then, the Wind Cloud list had become a slaughterhouse. Only those who submitted to the Ren family could survive. After such a big thing happened, everyone knew that there was a venerable emperor overseeing the Bone Mansion. Naturally, not many people continued to stare. After listening to their conversation, Yiqing Luo raised her brows in astonishment. "Ren Jianying is so impatient? They're fighting in the second round. Maybe he's worried about you." Gu Zishi began to analyze the situation. Ren Jianying could have easily obtained the inheritance rights of the Ren family from second young master Ren's hands. Moreover, she could have done so in a dignified manner that no one could find any fault with her. However, because second young master Ren chose you as his backing and Ren Jianying was afraid of you, she didn't dare to make a move against him. So, that's true, after all she's a lady, and if she wants to inherit the Ren family legitimately, even if it's coercion and bribery, there would still be people who are not convinced. Yiqing Luo lazily took another mouthful of the thing that Diamo Xian had sent to her lips. After swallowing, he continued, "Then, according to the current situation, Ren Jianying has already controlled most of the forces in the Heaven Realm?" "Yes." Tong Ziqing fished out a piece of map from her bosom and threw it to Yiqing Luo. "This is the distribution of forces that the group leader had secretly observed the current situation in the Heaven Realm. You can take a look." Chapter 45-31. Yiqing Luo took the map, spread out on the table in front of him. The map above was very detailed. Every single faction was clearly marked. He also marked the forces that had submitted to the Ren family. Yiqing Luo leaned into Dmo Xian's arms and looked through the entire map before putting it down. In that case, Ren Jianying has already cooperated with the royal family and both of them are preparing to split the Heaven Realm's territory equally? Tong Ziqing shook her head. I can't tell what Ren Jianying's real motive is based on the current information. Yiqing Luo pointed to a direction on the map. Ren Jianying's ambition is not just to divide the world equally. What she wants should be the control of the entire Heaven Realm. She is planning to wait for the Heaven Realm to completely stabilize, and then counterattack the imperial family? Hearing this, Gu Zixi expression was somewhat complicated. Yiqing Luo nodded her head. On one hand she's working with the royal family, on the other hand she's working with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness, so naturally she wouldn't easily give up half of the country to the royal family. She paused and said, the royal family has the same idea as Ren Jianying. On the surface they maintained a cooperative relationship. Behind the scenes they were contending against each other. He was waiting. Let's see who takes the wrong step first. Once he took the wrong path, it would be a complete loss. Gu Zixi pursed her lips and looked at Huang Fusheng worriedly. The Heaven Realm is now divided into two factions. What will happen to the four great families? The only way for the four heavenly families is to band together. Yiqing Luo took a look at Huang Fusheng and then looked at Xiao Jin. They will form a group and then split the world with the other two families. But looking at the relationship between the four great heavenly realms, I'm afraid it will be hard to form a group. After all, the four heavenly families had always been in a state of smiling on the surface but cursing in their hearts. Let them stick together. Therefore they needed a leader. All the aristocratic families felt that the leader should be one of them. Therefore it was impossible for them to live in peace. After Yiqing Luo finished her words, she looked at Xiao Jin and Huang Fusheng's slightly changed expressions and her lips curled as she continued. But, based on Huangfu family's current situation, there's a high possibility that they will choose to rely on the Ren family or the royal family. She paused. As for old man Huangfu, if he's willing he can first hide in the Gu residence. On the surface Huang Fusheng and Xiao Jin didn't seem to care about the Huangfu clan. However, deep in their hearts they didn't want the Huangfu clan to be destroyed just like that. What they hated the most was the current clan head of the Huangfu clan and his people. Not the Huangfu clan. Yiqing Luo folded the map once again and immediately stood up. She walked towards Tong Ziqing and returned the map to her. No matter what happens to the Huangfu family in the future, as long as your Huangfu bloodline still exists, it's not impossible to rebuild the Huangfu family. Huang Fusheng and Xiao Jin's pupils instantly constricted. Their faces were filled with complicated emotions. After the Ren family stabilizes the current situation, the next one will be our Gu mansion. So, let's make the best use of our time and rest well. Yiqing Luo returned to Dmo Xian's side and stretched out her hand. I suddenly recalled that there's an extremely important matter waiting for me to settle. Dmo Xian held her hand and stood up. His hands naturally circled around her slender waist. They were still a little confused. Yiqing Luo had already pulled Dmo Xian out of the main hall. Looking at Yiqing Luo's figure completely disappearing before their eyes, Gu Zixi sighed as she half squatted in front of Huang Fusheng and held his hands. What Luo said is right. As long as you and Xiao Jin are around, rebuilding the Huangfu family is not a problem. Update complete. What? End of this chapter. Chapter 45-32. Huang Fusheng raised his head in a daze, his eyes staring deeply at Gu Zixi. In his eyes, there was hesitation and helplessness. He was also unable to sort out his thoughts at this moment. He held Gu Zixi's hand and held it tightly. It was as if only by holding her could he feel her by his side. Gu Zixi slowly approached him. Soon after, she stood up and hugged his head. Pressing it into her embrace, she gently soothed his emotions. Towards Huang Fusheng. She who grew up with him was naturally clear about it. She was very clear about Huang Fusheng's thoughts at this moment. All she could do was to stay by Huang Fusheng's side and give him warmth. On the other side, Yan Shaoyi used her elbow to nudge Xiao Jin. Did you hear that? As long as you are with that kid, it's possible to rebuild the Huangfu family. If the Huangfu family is destroyed, then so be it. Isn't it better to take this opportunity to reshuffle the cards? Xiao Jin raised his hand and held Yan Shaoyi's arm. With a little force, he pulled her into his embrace. That ordinary and mediocre face made it shine even brighter, like colored glass. deep and seductive. Yan Xiaoyi stretched out her hand and pinched his face fiercely. The touch of her skin was extremely real. Don't think that you can use your face to divert my attention. The more you act like this, the more it means that you care about the Huangfu family. Yan Xiaoyi said. Qiao Jin hooked his arm around the woman's neck and bent down to bite her lips. That pair of glazed black eyes shone with an even more enchanting luster, glistening brightly. I have left the Huangfu family since I was young. What happens to the Huangfu family is not important to me. He replied in a low voice without much emotion. Yan Xiaoyi laughed coldly. I know better than anyone what you are thinking in your heart. She pinched Qiao Jin's face harshly. Only when a red mark appeared on Qiao Jin's face did she let go. Her fingertips lightly touched the red mark on Qiao Jin's face, and she curled her lips with a cold smile. This face of yours is really realistic. Qiao Jin's large palm covered Yan Xiaoyi's hand, completely enveloping her small hand in his palm. He pulled her into his arms and hugged her tightly. He didn't want the person in his arms to see his current expression. Yan Xiaoyi buried herself in his embrace and wrapped her arms around his waist. She softened her tone. You know very well that the Huangfu clan has lost its purpose of existence and has become a capital to show off. Didn't Qing Luo say it already? As long as old Master Huangfu is willing, he can stay in the Gu residence, and after the matter has ended, we will reform the Huangfu family, a new Huangfu family that belongs to us. Qiao Jin did not speak again. But his hands were wrapped around Yan Xiaoyi's. He exerted more strength and pressed her tightly in his arms. After Yi Qing Luo pulled Diamo Xian out of the main hall, she rushed towards another courtyard. Diamo Xian pulled her. Are you going to look for Ren Jiaming? I promised him that I would help him save someone. Yi Qing Luo slapped her forehead. It was in order to save that person that I went to the Gu residence's warehouse and discovered the secret in the ancestral hall. She had been unconscious for a few days in the barbaric Blood-Bone King's memory space. Ren Jiaming would probably go crazy from anxiety, right? Diamo Xian replied. On the second day after you went missing, he left. Yi Qing Luo. What? Left? He dragged a crippled body and left the Gu residence? Did he want to be captured back by Ren Jianying, to present his head to her? Or did he want Gong Xiazhu to capture him back to be the prince consort? End of this chapter. Chapter 45-33. As though he had seen through Yi Qing Luo's thoughts. Diamo Xian's slender fingers poked her head. I know, I will definitely do what I promised others. Yi Qing Luo's eyes lit up. She grabbed his big palm with both hands. A pair of long and narrow eyes blinked. His face was filled with obvious joy. You helped him? Looking at the expression on the young lady's face, Diamo Xian raised his brows. He did not speak. He touched his thin lips with his hand. The way his fingers caressed his thin lips. He was so handsome that people couldn't close their legs. Yi Qing Luo decisively hooked her arms around the man's neck and pressed her pink lips against his, planting a kiss on his lips. Then she gazed deeply at him with her big wet eyes. After being kissed by the girl, the man was satisfied. Xiao Jiu will follow him, he will be fine. Yi Qing Luo bounced and jumped into the man's arms. Her four limbs were all wrapped around Diamo Xian. She hung all her weight on the man's body. Ah Xian treats me the best. I like Ah Xian the most. The young lady's sweet words were like a ray of sunshine, seeping into Diamo Xian's heart. That pair of bright and mischievous eyes shone into the depths of his eyes at close range. Her heart was filled with tenderness. Everything he did was to make little Luo happy. Lil Luo was happy. He was satisfied. Let's go, let's hurry and settle Ren Jianming's matter then. We'll go find trouble with the Ren family. Yi Qing Luo climbed down from his body. Diamo Xian rubbed her little head. Then he summoned Little Nine. Little Nine brought the two people in the direction that Ren Jiaming was currently at. Even with Little Nine's speed, he had still rushed for at least half an hour in midair. It looked even more remote and gloomy, like a patch of green plants that grew naturally and one couldn't tell what it was. No matter how one looked at it, it was extremely strange. Yi Qing Luo looked at the environment below as she ridiculed in her heart. Can't that fellow Ren Jiaming just stay in the Gu residence properly? He has only been missing for a few days. Is there a need to be so anxious? One person without any profound energy. And he even ran into such a deep mountain forest. Wasn't he afraid that a magical beast would suddenly appear and swallow him? This should be the place where the person he wanted to save is at. Diamo Xian's head rested lightly on Yi Qing Luo's shoulder as he spoke in a low voice. He closed his eyes. His peerless face was like a painting. When he opened his mouth, his warm breath was still beside her ear. For Ren Jiaming, the disappearance is equivalent to the destruction of his hope. Perhaps he thought that his disappearance meant that he refused to save that person. That's why he came here alone. Yiqing Luo. He's an idiot, right? This was a statement, not a question. Ren Jiaming might really be a fool. Haunted her for so long. He didn't even want face anymore. After much effort, she finally agreed. Did he just give up? There must be something wrong with this child's brain. Little Nine stopped in the depths of the forest. Diamo Xian carried Yiqing Luo down and stood on the ground. As far as the eye could see, everything in front of him was green. The green was strange. Little Nine said that Ren Jiaming stopped here. Diamo Xian held Yiqing Luo's hand as they walked towards the front. Trees after trees flashed past in front of them. Diamo Xian brought her and went around several rounds. All of a sudden, the scene in front of him turned into a huge cave in an instant. Just like when she was in barbaric Blood Bone King's memory space, changing the scenery. Chapter 45-34. Reverse Enchantment? These 4 words suddenly popped out in Yiqing Luo's mind. She had only seen this enchantment once in Nirvana Realm, at the base camp of the Dark Forces. Old Man Tsang had explained about the reverse enchantment at that time. It was probably equivalent to, the reverse enchantment would hide the place or thing that it really wanted to hide. And for those who didn't know how to break the array, when they entered the reverse enchantment, they would only see the scene displayed by the reverse enchantment. Earlier, a large patch of lush forest or whatever, were all an illusion created by the reverse enchantment. In the enchantment, the place where she was standing was actually this huge cave. How did you know how to break this reverse enchantment? Yiqing Luo's hands hugged Diamo Xian's arm, her eyes filled with worship. Looking at the young lady's mischievous look. The lines on the man's face softened a little as his eyes oozed out traces of pampering. Since you were trapped in the enchantment, I was helpless. I researched on various ways to break the enchantment. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered slightly. Her charming eyes reflected the man's peerless looks. Her eyes were covered with a layer of warmth. He really placed her on the tip of his heart and pampered her. Because of a mistake which caused her to get hurt. So he tried his best to make up for it, to make himself stronger, and to be able to protect her safely. She was really very lucky. Yiqing Luo circled his neck as she kissed his lips hard. The young lady's eyes were rippling like water. Touched, gentle, affectionate. A smile flashed past Diamo Xian's eyes. Immediately his large palm clasped the young lady's slender waist tightly, deepening the kiss. The corner of his gaze seemed to be provoking, and also seemed to be warning, as it swept past somewhere not too far away. In the darkness, a figure could be seen faintly standing at the corner. That person looked at the scene in front of him without blinking. His gaze fell onto that devastatingly beautiful young lady's face. Looking at the young lady's blissful smile. Looking at the young lady's gentle and affectionate gaze. His heart felt as though it was being strangled, as though it was about to suffocate. The words that were in his mouth were swallowed back. Until the man's corner of his gaze swept over. That made his body suddenly stiffened. He quickly turned around and left that angle as though he was fleeing for his life. It was just like, the deepest secret in his heart seemed to have been discovered. That kind of panic. What's that sound? Yiqing Luo's ears twitched as a small head popped out from the man's body and looked around. Just now he seemed to have heard light footsteps. Diamo Xian naturally held Yiqing Luo's hand as he walked towards the direction where that person had left. Probably Ren Jiaming, let's go take a look. Yiqing Luo responded with a N, and followed behind Diamo Xian. After walking for a while, Yiqing Luo indeed heard clearer footsteps. In the dark cave there was a flickering light ahead. A tall figure stood out amidst the light. It seemed to have heard their footsteps. The figure walked even faster. Yiqing Luo looked for a while and barely recognized the other party. Ren Jiaming? That person's footsteps paused, then he suddenly sped up and strode forward. Was that meal? Yiqing Luo was almost certain that the person in front was Ren Jiaming. That child? Was it because she wasn't punctual and threw a tantrum? Yiqing Luo turned her head to look at Diamo Xian as she said, I'll go catch that devilish brat. What's the meaning of running away the moment he sees me? Saying that, she rolled up her sleeves and chased after that person. Hurry up and read the latest updates. Chapter 45-35. Before Diamo Xian could even open his mouth, the girl had already rushed over. He shook his head helplessly and dotingly. Naughty brat, he was a child. He didn't know how he was able to say the words naughty brat so calmly. The person in front was running a little slowly. Yiqing Luo merely took a few steps and had already caught up to that person. She grabbed the man's shoulder and turned him around. Under the dim light, Ren Jiaming's expression was ugly, mixed with complicated emotions. The expression in his eyes when he looked at her was also very complicated. After meeting Yiqing Luo's gaze, Ren Jiaming turned his head away. Why are you running? Yiqing Luo pressed his shoulder tightly. Ren Jiaming lowered his head and said nothing. Yiqing Luo directly slapped his forehead. Speak, why are you running? You don't want to see me? No. Ren Jiaming opened his mouth, his voice a little hoarse. Yiqing Luo snorted coldly. No, then why did you run away when you saw me? Ren Jiaming stammered, unable to utter a single word. Especially when he saw the man walking out from the darkness behind the young girl, his face turned even paler. The man was noble and elegant as he slowly walked over. It was as if a king had descended. It caused people to unconsciously submit to him. He lowered his head again and did not speak again. Yiqing Luo followed Ren Jiaming's gaze and looked behind. After seeing that it was Diamo Xian. Then he turned his head and looked at Ren Jiaming. Didn't you just agree to help? Did you have to run away when you saw me? Her gaze went past Ren Jiaming and swept behind him, where the light came from. At that time, I didn't set a time with him, so I didn't know about that person's situation. Don't tell me that I'm late by just a few days, but I'm already too late? No. Ren Jiaming immediately said, I don't blame. You didn't blame me for running away so quickly when you saw me? Yiqing Luo pushed him away and walked towards the light. Is the person you want to save inside? Ren Jiaming leaned to the side. His gaze landed on Diamo Xian again. His pupils constricted. Then she looked away in a panic. He speedily caught up with Yiqing Luo's footsteps as his heart trembled in fear. He saw the intimate scene between Yiqing Luo and Diamo Xian. His heart would ache. Actually, he had discovered his feelings towards Yiqing Luo a long time ago. It was just very clear. He was unable to stand by Yiqing Luo's side. The person standing beside her should be someone even more powerful. Therefore he had been suppressing his feelings. However, the look in Di Zun's eyes just now had obviously seen through all his thoughts. The overlord knew about his feelings for Yiqing Luo. Ren Jiaming tried hard to calm himself down, putting himself in the position of needing Yiqing Luo's help to save someone. He knew it was impossible for him to compete with venerable sovereign. He had never thought of standing by Yiqing Luo's side. Yiqing Luo continued forward. He walked closer to the light. Then he saw a luminous pearl flickering in and out of existence. After the luminous pearl, it was an ice bed that looked like an ice sculpture. No, it wasn't Wanru. It was because the bed was made of ice. It was also emitting a thin white cold current. On top of that ice bed, an old man with a white beard laid there with his eyes closed, not moving at all. Not knowing why, she felt that the old man's figure was a little familiar. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as she walked towards the ice bed. That person's face on the ice bed was clearly reflected in her eyes. Her pupils suddenly expanded. A disbelieving expression flashed past her eyes. Chapter 45-36. The person on the ice bed had a white beard and white hair. He was dressed in a white robe. Even if Yiqing Luo closed her eyes, she would still be able to recognize that face. Old Man Song. The person lying on the ice bed was Old Man Song. Diamo Xian also walked up, and when he saw the person on the ice bed, he was slightly stunned. He looked at the girl beside him, who was obviously stunned. He stretched out his arms and pulled her into his embrace. You didn't see wrongly, it's him. Diamo Xian's lips curled up slightly as he replied gently. Yiqing Luo suddenly regained her senses as she hurriedly walked towards the ice bed and squatted down beside it. Ren Jiaming walked over from behind, looking at Yiqing Luo's expression, and Diamo Xian, who was standing by the side. Sensing that something was amiss, he asked, Do you know him? Yiqing Luo wanted to stretch out her hand and touch the old man's hand, but he paused midway. Her breathing was a little erratic. She slowly raised her head and pursed her lips as she looked at Ren Jiaming. Why is he lying here? Was the person on the ice bed Old Man Song's body? The person Ren Jiaming asked her to save was Old Man Song? Ren Jiaming looked deeply at the old man on the ice bed. He wanted to protect me, so Ren Jiaming, protection? Ren Jiaming? Yiqing Luo's expression changed slightly. He subconsciously raised his head and looked at Dmo Xian. Something was not right. If this person was Old Man Song, then the timing didn't match at all. 10,000 years ago, Old Man Song had fallen into a deep slumber within the Azure Dew bracelet, becoming its guardian spirit. Ren Jianying was the person who had just appeared. How could he be lying here because of Ren Jianying? But, if this person wasn't Old Man Song, then how could it be explained that he had the exact same face as Old Man Song? Dmo Xian's large palm landed on the young lady's head as he gently rubbed it and said, "This isn't a difficult matter. Don't forget that when the barbaric Blood King was suppressed in the Nirvana realm, he was still in the Heaven realm, mobilizing his own forces." His gaze faintly swept over Old Man Song who was lying on the ice bed. Perhaps this is Old Man Song's avatar. Doppelganger? Yiqing Luo was stunned. You can play this way? Then, why has Old Man Song never mentioned it to me? Dmo Xian pondered for a moment, because he himself might not even know. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips tightly. She lowered her eyes and looked at the Azure Dew bracelet on her wrist. Her slender, jade-like fingers lightly stroked it. I previously promised Old Man Song that I will help him find his own body, and let him become a new person. Yiqing Luo's charming eyes flashed a faint radiance. Her gaze again fell on the person on the ice bed. If it's Old Man Song, can I? Yes. Dmo Xian's hands wrapped tightly around her slender waist. He is Old Man Song. If he is able to fuse Old Man Song's spiritual body into his body, he will become a real person. Wait, what are you guys talking about? Ren Jianying was confused as he listened to their conversation. He took a look at Old Man Song and looked at Yiqing Luo. What do you want to merge with him? What do you mean? Miss Gu, aren't you here to save him? Ren Jianying panicked a little. Yiqing Luo didn't say a word. Finding Old Man Song's body wasn't as happy as she expected. On the contrary, there was a heavy feeling. She knew the reason why Ren Jianying was panicking. It was the same thing that she was worried about. Because she couldn't be sure whether this Old Man Song in front of her was related to Ren Jianying or the Old Man Song that belonged to her. ***, the Karsic Old Man Mo was always looking for the right time to write. I tried my best to annoy you. I'll continue to work hard, sob sob sob. End of this chapter. Chapter 45-37. For Ren Jianying. Old Man Song was a benefactor to him. It was another kind of existence. It had nothing to do with her Azure Dew bracelet. Therefore, if his body and soul were to fuse together, he would not be able to do so. Would the person after the fusion still be Old Man Song? Split body, no matter how it's split, it's still the same person. Dmo Xian seemed to have seen through Yiqing Luo's thoughts. He explained in a gentle voice, "Actually, when I first saw Old Man Song, I felt that his soul wasn't complete. However, Old Man Song's consciousness and mind were very clear, so I didn't think too much about it. Based on the current situation, the Old Man Song in the Heaven realm should be a wisp of Old Man Song's spiritual consciousness. The majority of Old Man Song's soul is condensed within the Azure Dew bracelet. Perhaps because of the Azure Dew bracelet, it helped Old Man Song consolidate his own consciousness, allowing him to retain a healthy self-awareness even after losing a wisp of spiritual consciousness." When Yiqing Luo heard Dmo Xian's words, her eyes sunk slightly. Dmo Xian's words were actually very simple. Whether it was Old Man Song in the Azure Dew bracelet or him on the ice bed, they were all Old Man Song. One was the soul. One is the body. As for why Old Man Song's body could move freely in the heavenly realm, it was because there was a strand of Old Man Song's spiritual consciousness left in this body. But, why did that wisp of spiritual awareness appear in the heaven realm, and the reason why it was related to the Ren family, perhaps only Old Man Song himself knew. So, can he be saved? Yiqing Luo asked. So yes. Dmo Xian's deep eyes gazed deeply at her face as his thin lips curled into an extremely shallow arc, and only then can his soul return back into his body. He paused. He glanced in Ren Jianying's direction. Ren Jianying did the right thing. He knew to ask for help. Ren Jianying felt goosebumps all over his body from this sudden look. A chill ran down his spine. He clenched his fingers tightly, suppressing the frightening chill. He took a deep breath and said, "What are the two of you talking about? What exactly is your relationship with him?" Yiqing Luo looked at Ren Jianying. What did Ren Jianying do to him? Yiqing Luo's tone was slightly awe-inspiring. He was sure that this old man was Old Man Song. Yiqing Luo naturally wouldn't ignore it. And she was a very protective person. He had to avenge Old Man Song. Rin Jiaming looked at her serious expression and answered subconsciously, Elder Tsang is an elder of our Ren family. Elder Tsang saw through eldest sister's ambition and wanted to stop it, which caused eldest sister to retaliate. At that time, I didn't believe that big sister would do something so heartless and extreme just for the sake of the Ren family. But once when I came out of Elder Tsang's mountain, I was chased. Elder Tsang arrived in time to save me. At that time, Elder Tsang was trying to block the arrow that was shot from afar for me. He fell down and hasn't woken up even now. Rin Jiaming's emotions fluctuated as he recalled this memory. His fingers were tightly clenched as if he was suppressing some sort of emotion. Then he shut his eyes tightly. That arrow belongs to the Ren family. At that time I didn't understand. Now I understand. Everything at that time was Big Sister's plan. She was afraid of Elder Tsang's ability, afraid that Elder Tsang's status would affect her to control the Ren family. So she intentionally tried to kill me in Elder Tsang's territory. Chapter 45-38. Rin Jiaming gritted his teeth. His eyes were dark and hazy. He knows that as an elder of the Rin family, Elder Tsang will definitely not stand idly by. She used me to lure Elder Tsang out, and then used me to make Elder Tsang lie here, unable to wake up. So, right from the start, Rin Jiaming's target was Elder Tsang. Or rather, even if he didn't scheme against Elder Tsang, he could also take the opportunity to create trouble for Rin Jiaming. Or rather, he had inadvertently destroyed Rin Jiaming. It was enough to make him lose the right to be the successor of the Rin family. No matter what the reason was. As long as one of the two was achieved. To Rin Jiaming it was all good and no harm. Because Rin Jiaming schemed against him, so you think he has a way to deal with Rin Jiaming? Yiqing Luo asked. Rin Jiaming took a deep look at the ice bed. Yes. Elder Tsang will definitely be able to deal with Rin Jiaming. He is an elder of the Rin family. At this point, his voice suddenly became softer. Most importantly, I don't want anything to happen to Elder Tsang. I want him to recover. Elder Tsang was tricked because of him. And he was lying in this place. How could he not feel guilty? However, because of Rin Jiaming. However, he didn't dare to openly look for capable people to save Elder Tsang. He could only maintain his image as a hedonistic young master on the surface while secretly searching for a way to save Elder Tsang. Until he met Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo muttered to herself for a moment and replied calmly, I will save him. As long as you're willing. I can agree to any conditions. Rin Jiaming clenched his fists tightly as he looked at Yiqing Luo anxiously. Yiqing Luo shook her head. There's no need for any conditions or requests. I'm the one who wants to save him. Perhaps it was because Yiqing Luo's tone was simply too serious. Rin Jiaming clenched his fists and asked tentatively, You know Elder Tsang too? What do you mean by what you just said? Does Elder Tsang have a very good relationship with you guys? To me he is the most important elder. Yiqing Luo's charming eyes overflowed with radiance. So, I will save him. Rin Jiaming wanted to ask something, but he closed his mouth in the end. No matter what the relationship between Yiqing Luo and Old Tsang was. Since Yiqing Luo had agreed, she would never go back on her word. She would definitely make Elder Tsang open his eyes again, but a little difficult. Yiqing Luo slowly squatted down beside the ice bed. She held the hand gently. It was bone-chilling. It was extremely hard. Yiqing Luo's hands were trembling. Miss Gu, you can't touch Elder Tsang. Rin Jiaming saw Yiqing Luo's action and was so shocked that his eyes deepened. This is the 1,000-year frost. Old Tsang is protected by the cold air of the 1,000-year frost. This cold air will hurt you. It doesn't matter. The emotions in Yiqing Luo's eyes fluctuated strangely. Her heart was beating wildly. She held Old Man Tsang's hand. Although it was cold. But it was truly Old Man Tsang's body. Rin Jiaming saw that Dmo Xian had no intention to stop him, so he didn't say anything more. If the cold air really hurt Yiqing Luo, Dmo Xian would probably be the first one to stop Yiqing Luo from touching the ice. He placed all of his thoughts on Elder Tsang. Miss Gu, you said it's a little difficult. What do you mean? His situation is not as simple as you think. Yiqing Luo let go of his hand. The reason why he fainted is not only because of Rin Jiaming's schemes. Chapter 45-39. I can only do my best to help him. This is my promise to him. I promised him she would help him find a body that belonged to him and turn him into a true human. The tenderness in Yi Qing Luo's eyes gradually dispersed. Instead, there was determination in her eyes. Regarding old man Song's situation, Yi Qing Luo didn't really understand. Through Dmo Xian's explanation, she roughly understood. As long as he fused old man Song's spiritual body with his body, the memories between the two would also merge. Yi Qing Luo remembered that old man Song had mentioned it before. He wanted to turn old man Song back into a true human. He needed to collect all 5 pieces of the Azure Water Divine Artifact. Currently, she only had the Azure Water Ring, the Azure Water Silk Chain, and the Azure Water Pendant. He was still missing the Azure Crystal Pendant and the Azure Water Light Chain. As of now, she was still unable to sense the existence of the other 2 divine artifacts in her hands. Yi Qing Luo looked at the person on the ice bed and said word by word, "I will definitely remember that Song Shui 5-piece set and will definitely find a way to let you stand in front of me in a human form." The Azure Dew bracelet suddenly scorched her hand. It seemed to be old man Song's reply. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into a smile as her fingertips covered the Azure Dew bracelet. Just as he was about to ask old man Song's spiritual sense if he still had any memories of his body, the man behind her suddenly grabbed her slender waist. His expression became slightly serious. "Something has happened in the Gu residence." Yi Qing Luo immediately raised her head. "What happened?" "Before I left, I set up an enchantment outside the Bone residence." Dmo Xian held her still icy cold hand. "There's a fluctuation in the enchantment. Someone has left the enchantment." Yi Qing Luo's heart thumped. At the critical moment of the Heaven Realm, if he left the Gu residence so easily, he would be captured and skinned at any moment. There were clues to the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade and the Divine Emperor's Tomb. These 2 points attracted the attention of the various forces. On top of that, Ren Jianying had led the Ren family to take advantage of the situation during the leaderboard. Ren Jianying planned to control the entire Heaven Realm in a short period of time. Furthermore, Ren Jianying was in the Gu residence. If the people in the Gu residence left the Gu residence, they would definitely be killed. The walls had been gnawed until nothing was left. "Let's go. Let's return to the Gu residence first." Thinking of these consequences, Yi Qing Luo's expression turned extremely ugly. "Ren Jianying, I'll have to trouble you to take care of old man Song." "Me too." Ren Jianying was just about to speak, but he was interrupted by Yi Qing Luo. "This place is a very good hiding place. You stay here and guard old man Song." Without waiting for Ren Jianying to speak, she took the lead and headed back in the direction they came from. When Yi Qing Luo arrived at the Gu residence, the Gu residence was already in a mess. Gu Yun stood at the entrance of the Gu residence and opened her arms. "All of you calm down. Sir Dizun has specially ordered this servant not to let you leave the Gu residence. There must be a reason for Sir Dizun." Yen Xiaoyi and Gu Zishi were blocked at the door. Their expressions were ugly and dark. One of their hands was on Gu Yun's arm, wanting to push her away. Beside him stood Tong Ziqing and Long Yunzhan, whose expressions were also not very good. He looked around. However, Gui Wu and the others were nowhere to be seen. Chapter 45-40. Yen Xiaoyi and Gu Zishi, who were struggling to rush out of the Gu residence's main door, stopped. Since the other party used such a method, then they must have set up an inescapable net, waiting for you to walk right into it. Gu Yun saw that she had persuaded the both of them and immediately added on. Yen Xiaoyi and Gu Zishi looked at each other. The expressions on their faces were complicated, as though they were forcefully suppressing the surging emotions in their chest, trying their best to calm their own emotions. Yen Xiaoyi's fingers clenched tightly as she punched the air. "Then what should we do? Don't tell me we are just going to stand here and wait." Gu Yun lowered her head in difficulty. "I think we should wait for the Overlord and eldest young miss to return to the residence." "You also said it's an inescapable net. How could cousin Xiao and Ah Xing be those people's match?" Gu Zishi was panting heavily as she spoke. She paced back and forth anxiously on the spot. Her face was filled with unconcealable anxiety. "It won't happen." Yen Xiaoyi took a deep breath as her voice trembled slightly. She could tell that she was restraining her own emotions. Since they used such a method to intentionally lure Qiao Jin and Huang Fuxing away, then they must have made up their minds to use them as bait to lure Qing Luo out. Yen Xiaoyi wasn't sure if she was convincing herself or convincing Gu Zishi. Before Qing Luo appears within a short period of time, their lives will absolutely not be in danger. Gu Zishi's eyelashes fluttered as she opened her mouth wanting to say something but swallowed it down as she changed to something else. What you said is right. They will be fine, they won't. But after the both of them finished saying this sentence. But both of them fell into silence. No matter how they tried to convince themselves. Their hearts were still unable to cross that hurdle. They were unable to control themselves not to worry about them. Their lives wouldn't be in danger. But the others? They were such proud people, how could they endure becoming the other party's captives? Just at this moment. What happened? Who has left the Gu residence? A clear voice sounded as though it was faintly discernible in the air. When that voice rang, the group of people who were squeezing at the entrance with a heavy atmosphere suddenly raised their heads and looked over. A huge-tailed fox descended from the sky. Immediately after, a tall and upright Dmo Xian leapt down from the tailed fox's back. He leaned forward and hugged the other person on the fox's back. The girl's flowing red dress was like a flowing fire, pouring down in torrents. When he saw that person, everyone's eyes suddenly lit up. Qing Luo. Yan Xiaoyi seemed as though she had grabbed onto a life-saving straw as she dashed forward towards Yi Qing Luo. Jin Zihe. He has left the Gu residence. Her words were concise and comprehensive as she swiftly told Yi Qing Luo about the matter. It was probably, when the Ren family was unreasonable and tyrannical, many families and forces chose to submit to him. Among them was the Huangfu family. Huangfu family's target had always been Yi Qing Luo. As a result, the Huangfu clan came to the Gu residence under the orders of the Huangfu clan. He didn't know what method the Huangfu clan had used. He had actually tricked those two cousins out of the Gu residence. When Xiao Jin and Huangfu Sheng were in the Bone residence, the people from the outside world couldn't do anything to them. But they left the Gu residence. How would the Huangfu clan's people possibly let them off? The more she recalled, Yan Xiaoyi's anxiety grew even more. Dear, this chapter has ended. I wish you a happy reading. Big smiley face. Chapter 45-41. She held Yi Qing Luo's hand as her palms were filled with cold sweat. Qing Luo, Huangfu family? Must be setting a trap for us. Jinzi will be fine, he will be fine, right? I know. Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as her long and narrow pupils reflected a piercingly cold glint. Huangfu family's motive is probably not just to lure me into their trap. That Ren Jianying. It's time to meet her. It had always been her who schemed against others. How could others scheme against her? As well as the brothers whom she cared about? Since the other party was trying all ways and means to lure her out, then she would grant them their wish. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into a smile. Swinging into a cold smile. Yan Xiaoyi wanted to persuade her. But when her gaze landed on Dmo Xian, she swallowed her words back. Right. The Overlord was here. The Overlord would protect Yi Qing Luo well. Huangfu family. In the huge courtyard there was a rain of blood and a foul wind. Sand and pebbles flew as trees were uprooted, turning into a pile of ruins. And in that flying pebbles hurricane, faintly a few figures could be seen. Xiao Jin and Huangfu Sheng stood in the middle of the ruins. Their long robes fluttered along with the hurricane. Endless profound waves were released from both of them. It surged like the rolling waves of the ocean. A murderous aura filled the entire space. And the surroundings of the courtyard were surrounded by hundreds of guards. There were also dozens of secret guards hidden in the dark, surrounding them tightly. In front of the two of them, an insolent mocking voice came. You two, your words are pretty. You said you weren't interested in the Huangfu family, but the minute you heard that Huangfu family was re-electing for the position of the family head, you immediately rushed back. Your ambition has been exposed. The smoke dispersed, revealing Huangfu Dongyu's face. On both sides of him stood the third brother Huangfu Qifei and the dying Huangfu Fengyan. It was the brother and sister trio again. Xiao Jin's ordinary face had an extremely solemn expression. After hearing Huangfu Dongyu's words, a sliver of disdain surfaced in his eyes. He couldn't even be bothered with Huangfu Dongyu. We're not here to run for the position of patriarch. Huangfu Sheng clenched his fists, unable to maintain his composure. I want to find grandfather. What right does a bastard have to call me grandfather? Huangfu Fengyan revealed a sinister expression, a shameless mother giving birth to a shameless son. Is he even fit to appear in the Huangfu clan? Living under the same roof and breathing the same sky with you? I even feel disgusted by the air. The three Huangfu siblings couldn't understand this at all. Why did Grandpa have to be so biased towards a young child? Any one of them would be hundreds of times stronger than that bastard. But grandfather would never be able to see them. However, not anymore. The Huangfu clan now belonged to them. They could arrange it however they wanted. He could change the rules however he wanted. Swish, a sharp and cold gaze ruthlessly stared at Huangfu Fengyan. Huangfu Sheng's eyes were filled with murderous intent. His tightly clenched fingers made cracking sounds. Qiao Jin's hand pressed on Huangfu Sheng's arm. Don't be angry. She deliberately provoked your anger so that you would take the initiative to make a move. His expression was calm, and his ordinary face exuded a sense of nobility and majesty. When he looked at Huangfu Fengyan, he easily suppressed all of Huangfu Fengyan's voice. Chapter 45-42. Qiao Jin clearly did not do anything. But his aura had an aura that could suppress everything. Huangfu Sheng's muscles were all tensed up, and there was an irrepressible anger in his emotions. But after looking down at the hand on his arm, he still suppressed his anger. Huangfu Fengyan knew what his bottom line was. She was also very clear about what words could provoke his most direct anger. Huangfu Fengyan mentioned his mother at this time. It was obviously intentional. If he really made a move, she would fall into the opponent's trap. Huangfu Fengyan was frightened by Huangfu Sheng's gaze. Her face instantly turned pale. But she forced herself to show a provocative expression. But the enraged Huangfu Sheng only looked at her with an extremely vicious gaze, and did not have the intention to make a move. Huangfu Fengyan did not achieve her goal, and was even stared at by Huangfu Sheng's vicious gaze. There was an inexplicable feeling of strangeness. She looked at the side at the gentle and elegant Huangfu Qifei, and her eyes were slightly in a mess. She took a deep breath, then looked at Huangfu Sheng and continued, "Don't make it sound so nice. At the end of the day you just want to compete for the position of the head of the Huangfu family. But let me tell you, you are a bastard, a wild beast that has long been removed from the family tree. Both of you have no right to compete. Who cares about the competition for the position of the head of the family? I will only say it once, hand over the old man. What you want to do in the future has nothing to do with us." Qiao Jin impatiently interrupted her. Although grandfather is no longer the head of the Huangfu family, his authority is still there. Now that the selection for the position of head of the family is imminent, grandfather naturally has to uphold justice in the Huangfu family. Huangfu Fengyan sneered and said, "You say that you want to see grandfather, but you just want to make use of grandfather's fondness for you to gain his support." Qiao Jin did not even bother to look at her, but stared directly at Huangfu Dongyu and said, "Tell me directly, you specially made use of the old man to lure us here. What is your motive?" Huangfu Dongyu placed his hands behind his back and sneered, "Naturally. I want you to never be able to return to the Huangfu clan." There was an obvious murderous intent in his eyes. Both of you are incompatible with the Huangfu family. Both of you don't have the right to stand in the Huangfu family. The only way to prevent you from ever returning to the Huangfu clan is, Huangfu Dongyu grinned, revealing a treacherous sneer as he said word by word, "Both of you die." As soon as he finished speaking, a slim and graceful figure walked out from behind the two of them. The man was dressed in black, and his black hair was tied into a simple bun, revealing his exquisite face. That person had an outstanding temperament, and his every movement was filled with nobility. Between her eyebrows, there was the beauty of a woman, as well as the sharpness of a person in a superior position. When Huangfu Sheng saw who it was, he cautiously moved closer to Qiao Jin. "Ren Jianying." "Yes." "The person who came was the current head of the Ren family." "Ren Jianying." Ren Jianying's posture was noble and arrogant. She raised her chin slightly, revealing her fair neck. Her red lips curled slightly. "I have no choice. First Mistress Gu refused to leave the Gu residence. If I want to see her, I can only use this method." Although Ren Jianying was smiling, but under that smile there was a huge turbulence. End of this chapter. Chapter 45-43. She raised her finger. She didn't waste any words. She directly made her move. Qiao Jin vaguely saw the extremely faint black aura that Ren Jianying swept away when she made her move. It was a little strange. When he looked again and again he didn't see anything. The next moment, Ren Jianying's attack had already rushed in front of him. As expected of the person who crippled Ren Jianying and became the new head of the Ren family with her own strength. When she made her move there was no hesitation at all. Qiao Jin and Huangfu Sheng didn't even have time to react. They quickly raised their hands to counterattack. The two sides were fighting. He didn't know if it was Qiao Jin's illusion. Every time Ren Jianying made her move, Qiao Jin could vaguely see a wisp of extremely faint black yin qi lingering around Ren Jianying. Bang! There was a loud explosion. A figure was sent flying by the mysterious wave and fell heavily to the ground. Then there was the sound of weapons colliding. Huang Fusheng. Qiao Jin wanted to catch Huang Fusheng, who was flying out. But he didn't have time to move. Ren Jianying had already attacked from the other side. As soon as she got close, Qiao Jin could almost clearly see the black aura seeping out of Ren Jianying's eyes. That kind of black aura made one's heart palpitate with fear. His heart skipped a beat. The expression on his face also changed slightly. Oh no! This black aura? It was the evil aura of the Dark Palace. Ren Jianying? Ren family, Dark Palace? No wonder Ren Jianying could so smoothly seize the position of the head of the Ren family, and also so smoothly split the world with the imperial family in the Heaven Realm. With the help of the Dark Palace. It probably wouldn't take long. The imperial family would have to lower their heads to Ren Jianying. This Ren Jianying really couldn't be underestimated. Ah! Huang Fusheng suddenly let out a miserable scream. Qiao Jin's gaze immediately looked over. He saw that Huang Fusheng's face was pale, his hands forcefully blocking in front of his chest. An obvious black aura suddenly penetrated his body. Blood gushed out in an instant. Qiao Jin lifted his foot, wanting to rush over. However, the woman's soft laughter rang in their ears. I'm really sorry. You two be obedient and you won't have to suffer so much. This voice was very close. Qiao Jin suddenly raised his head. He met Ren Jianying's sharp and beautiful eyes. She curled her lips at him and smiled sweetly. However, there was a bloodthirsty sneer in his eyes. Qiao Jin quickly retreated. She was actually this powerful. To actually be able to use the mysterious yin energy of Dark Ghost Palace properly. His movements were a step too slow. The power that erupted from Ren Jianying shook the surrounding air. Suddenly he felt as if something was squeezing his chest. The next moment, blood flowed out from Qiao Jin's mouth. His body also staggered a little. Don't worry, I'll be gentle. Besides, I don't want your lives. Ren Jianying was still smiling faintly. What I want is just to use the two of you to trick Miss Gu to come over. Stop struggling. None of you will be able to escape. The smile at the corner of Ren Jianying's mouth grew wider. She walked in the direction of Qiao Jin and Huang Fusheng. Every step she took, the black aura that lingered around her body became stronger. It carried a cold, killing intent. At this moment, a cold and melodious voice rang out leisurely. I didn't expect that I would have such a big face for Miss Ren to spend so much effort to trick me. Chapter 45-44. That voice seemed to carry a smile. But it was filled with extreme chilliness. Every word and sentence could directly strike into one's heart. I'm also very curious, is it all of us who can't escape, or eldest Miss Ren? Can't escape? The low laughter turned colder and colder. Why not, let's give it a try? When Ren Jianying heard this voice, her expression instantly changed. But very quickly a smile surfaced on her face. She stopped in her tracks as she looked towards the direction of the voice. She saw the horizon from far to near, a huge nine-tailed fox descending from the sky. A fiery figure leapt down from the back of the nine-tailed fox. Devastatingly beautiful, like a dream or fantasy. Eldest Miss Gu. On seeing the person, Ren Jianying's expression changed several times. She restrained the majestic profound waves as she smiled at Yiqing Luo. It's really difficult to meet you. Yiqing Luo slowly walked towards her. Her footsteps were neither fast nor slow. The expression on her face was calm and indifferent, without much fluctuation of emotions. Eldest Miss Ren has put in so much effort just to meet me, it shows that eldest Miss Ren absolutely has true love for me. Yiqing Luo replied with a smile. Her long and narrow eyes rose, but there wasn't any warmth in her eyes. She stopped in front of Ren Jianying. The two of them exchanged glances. Both of them were grinning. In the dark, the undercurrent was surging. If I don't come, wouldn't I disappoint eldest Miss Ren? Yiqing Luo said. Ren Jianying laughed lightly. Actually, we have the same goal, why not make a deal? Yiqing Luo raised her brows. Oh? Ren Jianying, I want Ren Jiaming and you want old Master Huangfu, how about we exchange people? Patriarch Ren. Huangfu Fengyan's expression changed as she cried out involuntarily, grandfather cannot be handed over to them. Originally she thought that this was a sentence that touched the heaven and earth. But immediately following that, the second half of Huangfu Fengyan's sentence came out from her mouth. Huangfu family is still waiting for grandfather's words, if we let grandfather call for them now, there's a possibility that grandfather will find the next successor from those two bastards. After all, there was Huang Fujin. In the current Huangfu family, the only one who had golden pupils and was recognized by the ancestor as the successor. Whether it was the old man or the elders of the Huangfu family, they would probably choose to support Huang Fujin because of his appearance. Most people with absolute power and strength would only be loyal to their family. That's your family's business. It has nothing to do with me. Ren Jianying glanced at him indifferently, her eyes filled with disdain and mockery. Huangfu Fengyan was both angry and annoyed. She clenched her fists and said, "Didn't you say that you wanted to cooperate with the Huangfu clan? You can't just care about your own interests and ignore us." Fengyan. Huangfu Qifei's elegant brows furrowed as he reached out to grab Huangfu Fengyan's arm, signaling her to shut up. Ren Jianying swept her gaze in the direction of the Huangfu clan. His expression was extremely arrogant. Cooperation has always been driven by interest. Why can't I just care about my own interests? Ren Jianying rolled her eyes at her, as if mocking her 5 fingers and stupidity. Following that, his attention returned back to Yiqing Luo. "What do you think of this suggestion of mine?" "I feel that there's no need." Yiqing Luo smiled as she opened her mouth. His footsteps were getting closer and closer to Ren Jianying, until he stood in front of Ren Jianying. End of this chapter. Chapter 45-45. Yiqing Luo leaned forward slightly as she got closer to Ren Jianying. She leaned close to Ren Jianying's ear. She laughed softly. This distance was extremely close. So close that Yiqing Luo could clearly feel that when she got closer, Ren Jianying's body had turned stiff. Even his breathing had become a lot more hurried and messy. Yiqing Luo's slender brows rose slightly as her pink lips curled into a smile which didn't look like a smile. "Eldest young Miss Ren seems very anxious." Her words had just ended. Ren Jianying hurriedly took a step back. Her breathing and emotions were obviously even more messed up. Yiqing Luo took another step closer as she maintained the distance between her and Ren Jianying as she suppressed her voice. "Ren Jianying is the person I want to protect now. If I give him to you just because you say so, wouldn't I lose my face?" The young lady's tone and voice was obviously joking. Ren Jianying was just about to open her mouth. Suddenly she felt a chill on her neck. A ray of light flashed past her eyes. Ren Jianying lowered her eyes and saw a flame feather fan pressed against her neck. The handle of the fan had a dagger's length sharp blade as it stuck close to her skin. Ren Jianying's body turned even more stiff as even her voice had a slight change. "What do you want to do?" "To catch the bandits, first catch the ringleader." Yiqing Luo smiled sweetly as her voice was clear and melodious, totally not looking like she was using a dagger to press against someone's neck. Ren Jianying's fingers clenched tightly as she suppressed the panic in her heart to keep herself calm. It had been a long time. A long time since she had lost her composure like this. She shouldn't be like this. No matter what happened, she would absolutely be able to deal with it calmly. Ren Jianying shut her eyes tightly as her voice had already calmed down. "Eldest young Miss Gu, even if you capture me, it's actually not of much use. You've seen it for yourself, the 3 Huangfu siblings have deep enmity towards me. Even if it's what I say, they won't listen to it." The meaning behind her words. Even if they captured her, the 3 Huangfu siblings would also take action. Yiqing Luo casually replied with an "oh" word and innocently blinked her eyes. "I don't intend to capture you to negotiate terms with them." She paused for a moment, and the corners of her mouth curled up into an extremely shallow arc. He was extremely evil. Her tone and expression seemed to be mocking the Huangfu clan. She didn't put them in her eyes at all. That kind of ostentatious confidence made Ren Jianying feel uneasy. As expected. In the next instant the girl moved even closer. Even the sharp blade on her neck was pressed a little closer to the skin on her neck. "Call the person behind you over, let's have a face-to-face chat for a while." Yiqing Luo raised her brows at her. Ren Jianying's expression froze. "What do you mean?" "I don't understand what you're talking about. There are no outsiders here, so there's no need to pretend." Yiqing Luo tilted her head as she beamed. "The person behind you has schemed against me for such a long time, still not intending to reveal his true face?" Ren Jianying's eyelashes fluttered. "Why are you asking this?" "I want to kill the person behind you." Yiqing Luo smiled. Ren Jianying, pausing for a moment, she shook her head. "I don't have any person behind me. Everything was arranged by me alone. The number of times I've crossed hands with the Palace of Darkness is even more than the amount of salt you've eaten. You think I can't tell that your body has already been contaminated by the evil Yin Qi? Yi Qing Luo sneered. Do you think I can't tell that the reason why you're able to control the entire heaven realm in such a short period of time is because the Palace of Darkness made use of the evil Yin Qi to raise your profound grade, and used a forbidden curse to enhance you, which is why you could be so successful. Chapter 45-46. Yi Qing Luo's slender fingers lightly tapped on the sharp blade. Looking at the blood flowing out from the lady's neck, her lips curled. Eldest young Miss Ren, aren't you afraid that, after you've lost your value, secluded darkness palace, will directly swallow up everything that you've worked so hard for? Ren Jianying's pupils constricted. Eldest young Miss Gu also knows how to sow discord? Whether it's to sow discord or not, you know very well in your heart. Yi Qing Luo shrugged. Anyway, the person who loses everything by then isn't me. Ren Jianying remained silent for a moment as her expression turned ugly. What do you mean? Yi Qing Luo's long and narrow eyes curved, as her lips curled into a teasing arc. She slowly leaned closer to Ren Jianying. Her voice seemed to be bewitching as it was suppressed to an extremely low tone. After all, secluded darkness palace's existence has already exceeded the boundary of your prediction, isn't it? Ren Jianying's body suddenly stiffened as her eyes widened, staring at Yi Qing Luo in disbelief. Her eyes revealed astonishment and astonishment. Between her eyes, there were some unnecessary emotions as the undercurrents were surging. You. Her lips trembled slightly as she wanted to open her mouth, but didn't know how to ask. In her eyes, there was an obvious hesitation. There's still a lot of things that I know. Yi Qing Luo smiled as she patted her shoulder. If I didn't guess wrongly, I should also exceed the boundary of your prediction, that category. Plus, Ren Jianying chose me. So, you panicked, targeting the Gu residence several times, scheming against me? Trying to get rid of this unknown factor, right? Following Yi Qing Luo's words, each and every word was spat out from her mouth. Ren Jianying's face was deathly pale. That was the panic after her thoughts were exposed. That was the panic after a secret which had been hidden for many years was discovered. Yi Qing Luo had been paying attention to her expression. She was almost certain that right from the start her guess was right. She laughed lightly as her gaze was cold and piercing. Unfortunately, this unknown factor. You can't get rid of it. Ren Jianying suddenly raised her hand, as she pressed on Yi Qing Luo's wrist which was holding the glower flame fan. She used a lot of strength. Yi Qing Luo smiled as she stared into her eyes and said word by word, in your past life, you failed because of your cowardice, and in this life, you will repeat the same mistake because of your ambition. How did you? Ren Jianying pursed her lips tightly. Even her eyes were a little scarlet. Indistinctly, a wisp of black mysterious Yin Qi seeped out. Before Yi Qing Luo said it out, she was still hoping for a fluke. Perhaps Yi Qing Luo's words which had a hidden meaning was just to trick her. But, now she knew. Yi Qing Luo really knew about her hidden secret. She thought that it was impossible for anyone in the world to know this secret. But Yi Qing Luo knew. Her secret had been found out by someone. Miss Gu, if you are smart enough, you should know what to do. The smile on Yi Qing Luo's lips deepened. Scram. Tell the person behind you, if he wants something he can come and get it himself. After hiding for so long, it's time for him to see the light of day, she finished speaking. He moved his wrist slightly. A wave of profound energy rippled. She pushed Ren Jianying away. Ren Jianying staggered as she fell onto the ground. She had not regained her senses as she sat on the ground in a daze. Her eyes were filled with shock as she looked at Yi Qing Luo in panic. In her eyes, there were turbulent waves. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.